Chapter 875. He had appeared. The male lead of the scandal had appeared. The generals who had been yelling all shut their mouths. There was a hint of mockery in their eyes. In Balhaizi's eyes, the mockery in their eyes was filled with mockery and hostility. Perhaps they were mocking him for his incompetence and negligence. But at this moment, he could not care less. He followed Lu Haida and looked at a few rooms in the underground room before coming out. Torture equipment, blood, and remains. Before he was the governor, he had worked in the Ministry of Justice. He was one of the 4 famous detectives in the capital. He had a wealth of experience in solving cases. With just a brief inspection, he could determine that the scene was not a fake. He could also see what kind of cruel things had happened here. These 2 points were enough. Although he had never come to the Copper Sparrow Terrace to drink wine, he knew of the reputation and rumors of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. This was the #1 brothel of the capital, and many important officials of the court had a stake in it. It was His Majesty's property, and those who could spend large sums of money here to buy a smile from a beauty were all wealthy and noble clans. This place only served people with status. And those bloody underground rooms, although built underground, were decorated luxuriously. The torture equipment and props were all exquisitely made. These rooms were not simply used to punish servants. Combined with the confessions, the truth was obvious. Within the Copper Sparrow Pavilion that was renowned throughout the world for its glory and splendor, there were some people who relied on their family background, privileges, and even power to wantonly vent their dark bestial desires, destroy living beings, and obliterate humanity. This was an act that was utterly devoid of conscience, an act of beasts that weren't human, and their sins were so heavy that the heavens and the earth couldn't tolerate them. And as the governor, he knew nothing about this. The imperial capital was under his jurisdiction. Those who had died here had screamed in despair. They had prayed many times in their hearts, but they could only die with endless pain. He knew nothing about this. This was a great shame. This was the biggest joke in the world. There was no room for mockery or disdain. Bao Shiren's steps were very heavy. He slowly walked back to the 7th floor. Sun Lang was waiting for him there. The two looked at each other. Sun Lang lightly said, "Finished looking?" Lord Bao nodded silently. Sun Lang's lips curled into a smile. "What do you think?" Bao Shiren said bitterly, "This is a great dereliction of duty. I am not worthy of being the capital magistrate. I am not worthy of the emperor's trust." Sun Lang snorted and said coldly, "Bao Heizi, are you still going to be a coward? Don't you know who the master behind the Copper Sparrow Pavilion is? You don't know what happened to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, but does the emperor not know? The emperor knows, but why doesn't the emperor care?" Bao Shiren closed his eyes and said something that even he didn't believe. Maybe the emperor really doesn't know. Sun Lang laughed out loud and sat on the railing. He didn't mind explaining things more thoroughly. "If I hear such retarded words again, get out of here right now." He said, "You, Bao Darren, are a gentleman. You don't understand the thoughts of an emperor, do you? Then I will say it more clearly. This Copper Sparrow Pavilion is the property of the emperor. Do you think that the emperor spent so much effort to create this #1 brothel in the world just to satisfy the physiological needs of his officials so that they can come here to enjoy themselves? Those young masters of aristocratic families come here to throw away their money. Those scholars and martial arts masters come here to try their best to make beautiful women smile. Those important officials come here to visit prostitutes and set up banquets. Do you think they are here just to visit prostitutes? Do you think they are here to enjoy themselves? No. The young masters come here to throw away their money, not because their families have too much money to spend, and not because they are idiots who have too much money to burn. It is because this is the property of the emperor. They are here to contribute to the imperial treasury. They are here to bribe the emperor. Those scholars and martial arts masters who come here to compose poems and perform martial arts are not here to enjoy themselves. They hope that today's matter will spread out and have a small chance of reaching the ears of the emperor. That is the emperor's heart. Those important officials of the court come here to mess around 7 times a night and discuss important matters. It is not because the security measures here are good. It is because the security measures here are not good enough. They are here to prove their allegiance to the emperor. The emperor has a little handle on them. He can use it without worry. Do you understand? Sun Lang gazed at Bao Haizi, his expression warm. He patted his shoulder. As for how many commoners were cut into pieces, how many prostitutes were tortured to death, why would the emperor care? Would you care about how the ants on the roadside died? Injustice? How can that be called injustice? Every person that dies, the emperor has one more handle on them. This is an important weight to control the court and balance the situation. Isn't this a good deal? Lifting his hand, he patted Bao Haizi's cheek. Pa Sun Lang smiled faintly. Right now, how do you feel? Bao Shiren gritted his teeth. This is only your side of the story. Sun Lang nodded happily. Yes, after all, I did not break into the Inner Guard's office or the Emperor's Imperial study to find evidence. I cannot prove that the Emperor knows about these matters. But so what? He smiled. What I mean is, right now, what do you plan to do? Bao Shiren took a few deep breaths and extended his hand towards Sun Lang. Sun Lang's face immediately bloomed with a flattering smile. He jumped down and passionately shook Master Bao's hand. He nodded and bowed. Brother He, welcome to the revolutionary team. Bao Haizi was first taken aback. Then he forcefully shook off Sun Lang's hand and said angrily, I did not. Sun Lang said loudly, Little ones, you all heard it. Android, who was standing at the side, shouted loudly, Welcome to the team, Brother Bao Shiren. Pan Mei and Pongji also shouted from downstairs. Welcome to the team, Brother Bao Shiren. Su Dingfang, Lu Haida, Shan Xiongxin, Ma Shiying, and even more generals joined in to congratulate. The entire Luan Feng Heiming Tower was filled with the vigorous internal energy of the Tian Yuan generals. Inside and outside, everyone could hear it clearly. Welcome to the team, Brother Bao Shiren. For a moment, the audience who did not know the truth looked at each other. Sun Lang. A shout immediately sounded. Master Bao's internal energy sank into his dantian and roared. For a moment, he actually suppressed the disturbance of the choir and shocked everyone. Sun Lang dug his ears. Brother He, what instructions do you have? Bao Shiren stretched out his hand. Give it to me. Sun Lang stuck his head out and shouted, Imperial tutor Pang. Write a labor contract for Brother He. Master Bao said in a deep voice, I want those confessions and testimonies. Sun Lang waved his hand. No rush. Let's sign the contract first, and then we'll give you a welcome dinner. You can look at the documents tomorrow. You don't have to be so dedicated to me. We don't do 996. Bao Haizi said slowly, I won't be in cahoots with you. Sun Lang rolled his eyes. Then you can leave. I want those confessions and testimonies. Bao Shiren said, Give them to me. I'll leave immediately. Sun Lang snorted. Why? What do you want those things for? Of course it's to seek justice for those wronged souls. Master Bao said calmly. As the capital governor, I didn't notice this in time. This is my dereliction of duty. I will resign, but not now. Before that, I will do my best to make up for my mistakes and make these people worse than beasts pay the price. Sun Lang waved his hand, and the stack of confessions fell into his hand. He flipped through the thick stack of papers. These beasts, I don't know some of them, but I've heard of some of them. I'm sure those nameless people's family backgrounds aren't bad. Moreover, this is the Emperor's territory. Sun Lang shook the stack of confessions in his hand. It's not difficult to kill these hedonistic sons and beasts. But you have to handle the case, bring them to justice, put them on trial, and expose their crimes to the world. Do you think that's possible? It's easy to kill a person, but these people come from noble families. They value their reputation more than their lives. You want to expose their crimes and ruin their family's reputation. What does this mean? It means that these names, these wealthy families, all see you as their mortal enemy. They will do their best to smear your name, erase your reputation, defeat you, and kill you. With such a lineup, let alone a small capital governor like you, even the emperor would have to think twice before coming here. There was an indescribable ridicule in his smile. You, Bao Shiren, want to sweep the world and clear the sky with the banner of Huda law? Bao Shiren said faintly, Righteousness is unavoidable. I will abide by my oath. Dying for righteousness is a worthy death. It's better than living muddle-headedly. Sun Lang applauded and said, Amazing, amazing. Sacrificing your life for righteousness. You are a gentleman. I don't need you to praise me. Bao Shiren said, Give it to me. No. Sun Lang smiled and shook his head. Why should I give it to you? I'm the capital governor. This is my duty. There's a murder case here. I have the authority to investigate. Sun Lang threw the confessions back into the room, clapped his hands, and smiled. Is that so? But I'm sorry, Mayor Bao. From now on, this matter is no longer under your jurisdiction. Bao Shiren said coldly. On what basis? Sun Lang replied. On the basis that I'm still the Martial Arts Hall's Sword Pavilion General. On the basis that I was once the Supreme Marshal of the world's armed forces. On the basis that I'm now the Shinsei General. Lord Bao snorted. No matter how high your rank is, don't even think about overstepping your authority. This is not under your jurisdiction. It's under my jurisdiction now. Sun Lang said, I'm the Tianyuan Commander of War. I can take care of anything related to the Sky Demon. Not only will I take care of it, but I'll take care of it for sure. Bao Shiren was startled. The Sky Demon? Sun Lang nodded solemnly. That's right. Heavenly Demon, you've seen it all. Master Bao, the scene in the underground chamber was so tragic. Is it something an ordinary human can do? These people must have been bewitched by the Sky Demon and turned into evil lackeys. That's why they had such dark desires. So, this matter must be related to the Sky Demon. Anything related to the Sky Demon is my business. Bao Shiren didn't understand what Sun Lang meant at first. Then, his expression changed. Nonsense, Lord Bao said angrily. You're using this as a pretext to make a fuss. Sun Lang glared at him and said, They're F***king spouting nonsense. How dare you slander me? It's related to the Sky Demon? Then show me the evidence. Evidence, Sun Lang said with his hands behind his back. M.O. Sue. Yes. Chapter 876. Bao Shiren had been in charge of the capital office for many years, and his reputation was known throughout the imperial capital. During his political career in the capital, he had dealt with all kinds of people. There were good people, but there were even more bad people. There were crafty idlers, shrewd women, greedy mediocre people, and even domineering second generations, unruly servants who relied on their master's power, ignorant and incompetent members of the royal family, and even important ministers in the imperial court. He felt that he had seen all kinds of people. He felt that he had seen all kinds of weirdos. However, this was the first time he had seen a treacherous official who was so arrogant. He was so arrogant and daring that he called a deer a horse, and he had inverted right and wrong. It was so outrageous that it made one's hair stand on end. Thus, Lord Bao was enraged. How can you convince the world without these 3 words? Sun Lang laughed inexplicably and asked, Have you heard the Emperor and Empress explain the Great Desolate Mountain incident to anyone? Who do you think you are? Why should I care what they think? He had no respect for the law to this extent. He was so rampant that he was lawless. However, Lord Bao had nothing to say. The Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain had ended the chaos of the Tianyuan era. It was an unprecedented victory. The whole world celebrated, and the empire was in a state of euphoria. Under the influence of martial arts and endless glory, many mysteries were covered up, including the disappearance of the commander of war, Jia Ying. His death in battle was too bizarre. Many people did not believe that he died in the Great Desolate Mountain, and they had not given up on investigating the truth. Lord Bao was a straightforward boy. He had written to the emperor directly, but all his letters had been ignored. What followed was the hints from the martial arts hall and the advice from his teacher. He understood the emperor's attitude from these. The answer he was looking for might never see the light of day again, but it was just a possibility. There were too many variables and bizarre things in this world. The person who should have died long ago had returned with the truth and anger. This person was standing in front of him at this moment, patting his shoulder. His tone was gentle and patient, as if he was talking about something very normal. Old Bao, Heisey, let me teach you a lesson. When it comes to this matter, whatever I say is what it is. Whether I believe it or not, you have to believe it. They despised order, harbored evil intentions, and were bossy and domineering. Such a person was what Bao Shiren, a loyal subject, hated the most. He looked at Sun Lang with extremely disappointed and sorrowful eyes. He was heartbroken that the former commander of war had become like this, anger, determination, and unforgiving. His love for the common people had all turned into hatred for the Imperium. But no matter what, he couldn't say it out loud. Perhaps loyalty and righteousness were difficult answers to both sides. Who was the main culprit that made Sun Lang become like this? He already had an answer in his heart. But even so, Bao Shiren couldn't just stand by and watch, and Bao Shiren couldn't blaspheme his duty. But even so, the flames of war must not be ignited on this land again. He took a deep breath and slowly said, Sun Lang. Sun Lang nodded calmly. Those shameful people committed great crimes in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. As the capital magistrate, I must bring them to justice and make them pay the price for their crimes. This is my mission. Sun Lang said, I also believe that they must pay the price for their actions. Then hand over the witnesses and evidence to me. The rest will be left to the capital magistrate. I refuse. I don't believe in your laws. Your justice is already late. What is the point of a late justice coming here? Justice will not be absent, but right now is my justice. Bao Shiren coldly said, could it be that your justice is to create something out of nothing, to pin these people's actions on the Sky Demon, to threaten them, to use them, and to make them your tools and claws for revenge? No, Sun Lang calmly said. My justice is to let the dead rest in peace. Without rules, nothing can be accomplished. Then let the emperor first issue an edict to punish himself. Otherwise, what right do you have to talk about rules with me? Murdering a meritorious official and killing a general, Li Guangyuan is still in the right. Bao Shiren sternly said, How dare you? How dare you call the emperor by his name? Sun Lang's eyes were as calm as usual, but no one doubted his will. I will let you see even more impudent. Don't worry, it won't be long. Sun Lang. I will stop you. You can't do it. Then I will bet my life. But you can't even pass the test of these aristocratic families. Then I will bet my life. Go ahead. You have done a lawless and crazy thing tonight. Don't think that everyone will stand by and do nothing. Sun Lang dug his ears. His expression changed for the first time. Wait. Sir, what are you talking about? What did I do tonight? Bao Shiren's anger rose again. You led a group of people to attack the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, Sun Lang yawned. This was a decision made on the spot. I am the Shinsei General. Why would I make things difficult for a brothel? Of course it was because the Sky Demon was hiding there. You even publicly chased and beat up Prince Zhongshuan and forced him to the gate of Sky Bearing. Sun Lang loudly said, 14. My son Zhongshuan. The young prince appeared from the side of the room. He was flabbergasted. What did Sir Bao hear this rumor? I feel like old friends with the general at first sight. I see him as both a teacher and a friend. How could I possibly fight with him? The general's lifelong wish is to eliminate the Sky Demon. I admire him very much and have decided to follow him from now on. Sir Bao did not expect that there would be such a shameless person in the world. You even provoked the Tensei province. Sun Lang dug his nose. Do you have evidence? Bring the witnesses of the Tensei province. Ask them if I broke into the Tensei province alone, destroyed half of the Tensei main hall, and then pressed dozens of officials of the Tensei province to the ground. Why don't you let them say it themselves? He had been in politics for many years. There had never been a treacherous official who could anger Sir Bao to the point of dizziness. However, this also aroused his fighting spirit. I will definitely stop you. Sun Lang spread out his hands. Fine. I'm a good citizen of the Empire. Even if you want to frame me, I have a way to persuade the plaintiff to turn over a new leaf and stop slandering me. I think I am not guilty at all. As for how to persuade the plaintiff, it was obvious. Bao Shiren said angrily, Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your martial arts are high. Sun Lang laughed out loud. Android, who was beside him, also smiled. I'm sorry. You can do whatever you want just because your martial arts are high. I don't think you will ever understand this realm. There was nothing else to say. Sir Bao left the scene angrily as the soldiers of the Wanfeng and Ming Tower sent him off. Android sighed. He was also a smart person. Bao Shiren's attitude had already foreshadowed what was going to happen to him. Just like Sun Lang said, he would not even be able to pass the test of those aristocratic families. Fatty and said softly, "No wonder you said that the spear was here when he came over. Bao Hei worked so hard to come here, but you used him as a spear." He knew this, but he still had to. Sun Lang answered, "This is a battle of beliefs. These stubborn people will never care about their own lives. They will gladly use their lives to prove that the world has not fallen, that there is still hope in this world." Android asked, "Do you believe it?" This time, Sun Lang did not hesitate. Ping Dao, Kong Zhongwu, Madame Qi, Bai Yue, Madame Dowager, these people were still in his heart. He nodded and said, "I believe it." Android was silent. Then he changed the topic. "Bao Shiren will make things difficult for you after he returns?" Sun Lang nodded and said, "Yes. He pursues justice. He wants to bring those scumbags to justice and punish them according to the law. He will not agree with my actions of making false accusations and expanding the scope of the attack. Therefore, he will definitely settle this case before I close the net." Android said, "But those rich and powerful families will not allow Bao Shiren to sully their reputation." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Yes, but this is also a good thing. Bao Hei helped me block the fire and taught these people what is the lesser of two evils. After all, humans are kind of creatures that do not know what is good for them. Sometimes they need a clear contrast to know what is good for them and what is good for them." Sun Lang gestured with his hands and explained, "Master Lu once said that human nature is despicable. For example, if you want to open the window in a big room that is airtight and smelly, there will be a group of people who will say, 'Oh, it's so cold outside. It's not smelly here.' Anyway, they will not want you to open the window. But if you say that I will tear the roof down, they will definitely say, 'Don't be impulsive. Let's open the window.'" Android understood a little, but he was puzzled. Aunt Lu can say something like that. The other one. His surname is Zhou, and his name is Xiaoxing. He is from Dazhao, Zhujiang. Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "That's not the main point of the problem. The main point is that there's no harm if there's no comparison. Bao Hei is like a catfish, mainly used to liven up the atmosphere. With him jumping around outside, these famous clans will understand a little. They'll clearly understand that Bao Shiren and I, Sun Lang, are easier to deal with. Once they understand this, they'll make a decision. The first option is to let Bao Hei reveal this matter and admit that his family has a heartless animal who abused the innocent and humiliated the whole family. The second option is to listen to my orders and say that one of the family members was taken over by the Sky Demon. In anger, he put justice before family and actively cooperated with General Shen's investigation. In order to prove the family's innocence and wash away the shame of this matter, he will enthusiastically respond to General Shen's summons to fight the Sky Demon. 2 options. Sun Lang said, "Soon, they will know which option is easier to take and which enemy is easier to deal with." Fatty Android nodded and sighed. "Then Bao Hei will have almost no power to resist." "That is not necessarily true." Sun Lang's eyes were calm as he said lightly, "Because the Emperor will secretly help him." He turned to Android and smiled. "So, it is exactly what I want." Chapter 877. Late at night, the Copper Sparrow Terrace, which was usually as glorious as day, was filled with guests. Everything was unprecedentedly quiet. No one knew how many eyes were staring at this place. Because tonight, someone was stirring up a storm in the imperial capital. Because tonight's matter was just the beginning. The commander of war, Jia Ying, who had disappeared for 2 years, had officially returned to the imperial capital. Her first move was earth-shattering. The political landscape of the imperial capital was about to usher in a new round of turmoil. No one knew what this famous marshal of the empire wanted to do. Overnight, some people were happy and some people were sad. In the matter of the capital governor, Bao Shiren, who had the title of King of Hell, coming and leaving with a black face, was about to be placed on the desk of the imperial capital's ministers. Everyone wanted to know what Bao Haizi and Sun Lang talked about. Bao Haizi met up with his henchmen waiting outside. He was able to govern the capital governor and suppress the thieves, not only because of his personal ability, but also because of the help of his assistants. After a long period of cooperation and sharpening, this strong and powerful core team had worked together seamlessly and had an extremely tacit understanding. When Bao Haizi came out, they saw some clues. Bao Shiren calmly said, "Let's go." The people followed behind him and silently left the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The soldiers outside checked their identities, counted the number of people, and then returned the horses and made a path. Bao Haizi came aggressively and left without saying a word. Everyone looked at Bao Haizi's back and was silent for a moment. After a moment, Bao Shiren's aide, Gong Sun Su, asked softly, "Dong Wang, did things not go well?" Bao Shiren sighed deeply. His eye had a strong sense of loss and frustration. Everyone had never seen Bao Shiren so depressed. For a moment, they were all surprised. It did not go well. Gong Sun Su was silent for a moment. After all, it is that person. The four bodyguards behind him looked at each other. They did not understand this riddle and did not dare to ask more. But there was someone who did not understand but still dared to ask. The person on Bao Haizi's right frowned. Who is that person? Her voice was melodious and pleasing to the ear. Her tone could not hide a trace of laziness. This was her innate talent. The person who spoke tilted his head and looked at Bao Shiren. "Sir, you look very unhappy. Is it because you were bullied inside? The people here are very bad. They don't allow us to follow the guards and actually lets her go up alone." She had a valiant and heroic appearance, a healthy and beautiful figure, and an exotic beauty. But the most eye-catching thing was her strange eyes. In the darkness, they were round and bulging like two black pearls. She had cute furry ears and a slender tail that swayed nimbly behind her back. A beautiful flower was tied to the tip of her tail. She wore soft armor and had two swords at her waist. She had both the charm of strength and beauty. In the eyes of the people of the capital, she was the most reliable warrior. She was a descendant of the Dragon Sparrow dynasty. Her ancestors were mutants who fled from the Greenwood country. Her name was Zhan Zhao, and she was the sword-wielding bodyguard of Bao Shiren. His Majesty gave her the title of Imperial Cat. She was famous throughout the capital. She was the pride of the Celestial Empire. She was one of the best foreigners in the empire. Hearing this question, Bao Shiren just shook his head and smiled. "If that person does not want me to die, even if there are thousands of assassins in the Copper Sparrow Terrace, I will not be in danger. But if that person want me to die, even if you all go in, it will be useless," Zhan Zhao snorted. "Is he really that powerful?" Bao Shiren turned to look at her with a very serious expression. "Bodyguard Zhan, he is more powerful than you think. This is a serious matter. Don't make a decision on your own, and don't provoke him." Zhan Zhao nodded, but her two cat ears were already erect, and her tail was unconsciously spinning in circles. No one knew what this imperial cat was thinking. Everyone left the Copper Sparrow Terrace and hurried back to the capital magistrate's office. The Yamen runners were ordered to block all visitors. The four bodyguards and Zhan Zhao were guarding the entrance. Bao Shiren and Gong Sun Su entered the house and checked to make sure there was no one around. Then they began to discuss what happened tonight. In the officialdom, the relationship between officials and aides was very close. Bao Shiren and Gong Sun Su had been friends for many years. In name, they were master and subordinate, but in reality, they were as close as brothers. They had gone through many storms together and had reached the point where they could talk about anything. That was why Bao Shiren told Gong Sun Su the truth about what happened at the Copper Sparrow Terrace tonight. After listening, Gong Sun Su's face changed. He felt a pain under his chin, and a few strands of his beard were unconsciously pulled out. When he came back to his senses, he found that he was covered in cold sweat. Gong Sun Su took a step forward and grabbed Bao Shiren's sleeve. "Dong Wang, this is a matter of life and death. You must not be impulsive." Bao Shiren smiled and patted his hand, If Bao Shiren stands by and does nothing, then am I still Bao Shiren? Gong Sun Su also knew Dong Wang's nature and sighed. But this is really, Bao Shiren said lightly. I am the capital magistrate. This is my responsibility. I neglected the Copper Sparrow Terrace incident, and I should make up for my mistakes. I can't just sit by and watch Sun Lang use this as a pretext to set up a lynching, Gong Sun Su sighed. Dong Wang, are you going to risk your life for those heinous criminals? This is not for them. This is for the country. If there is a crime, then it should be dealt with according to the law. It should not be changed because of a person's preference. Otherwise, over time, where is the dignity of the country's law? After all, the rule of law is not as good as the rule of law. Bao Shiren said this and gently pressed his chest. He smiled bitterly. I can only convince myself like this. Gong Sun Su's body trembled. Dong, 3,000 scholarly honors, 8,000 days and months, monarch, minister, father, son, all that I've learned in my life, all that I have studied for more than 10 years, all that I have thought and believed. Sigh. Lord Bao smiled bitterly. The world is unpredictable and fate is unpredictable. The truth of this world is innumerable, but ordinary people cannot understand it. Knowledge is also boundless. Who can understand everything clearly and clearly? In the end, I am a scholar and I only want to have a clear conscience. Gong Sun Su did not say anything. He did not know what to say, but he knew that Dong Wang's heart was wavering. Some of his beliefs had already been shaken, but he still chose to abide by his duty. He only wanted to have a clear conscience. Lord Bao took a deep breath. His expression became firm again. In any case, the rule of law can't be wrong. Even if those who commit serious crimes are unpardonable, they must be sentenced according to the laws of the Imperium and be made to pay the price fair and square, instead of fabricating facts and setting up a torture chamber in private to bring selfishness and schemes into the trial of justice. This is my duty. I will protect it. I will protect it, because if it is only this matter, I will look straight into Sun Lang's eyes and tell him that I am right. For this, I can die without regrets. Gong Sun Su's heart ached. Dong Wang, Bao Shiren joked. If you are afraid, you can leave now. The advisor did not get angry. Instead, he laughed. He held Bao Shiren's hand tightly. Dong Wang is a righteous man. I will follow you to the end. Even if I die, I will die with honor. The two shook hands and looked at each other with a smile. They saw the determination in each other's eyes. But Bao Shiren still sighed in his heart. It is enough to sacrifice one's life. As for the safety of Mr. Bao and Guard John, there is no need to worry. Because Sun Lang, just like how you know that I will jump into a fire pit, I also know that you will not stand by and do nothing. So let's fight. After the two of them expressed their intentions, Gong Sun Su immediately got into the mood. As Commander of War said, Dong Wang is like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. If you want to bring those criminals to justice, you will definitely cross the bottom line of those aristocratic families. They will try their best to stop Dong Wang for the sake of their family's reputation. Bao Shiren slowly nodded. This was the meaning of the question. But the situation may not be as bad as we think. Bao Shiren was excited. Oh, I would like to hear the details. Gong Sun Su slowly said, Forgive me for being presumptuous. This is not a conflict between Dong Wang and Commander of War. It is a fight between the Commander of War and His Majesty. He raided the Copper Sparrow Terrace and found a lot of evidence. He also wants to label it as the chaos caused by the Sky Demon. In the end, he wants to make His Majesty look bad. The people at the Copper Sparrow Terrace are all close to His Majesty. Commander of War is swift and decisive. He wants to suppress the people who want to protect His Majesty. As for his methods, the most vicious is to sow discord. Bao Shiren somewhat understood. He raised his eyebrows. You mean His Majesty will not stand by and do nothing? Of course, Commander of War allowed Dong Wang to leave because he wanted to let the big families choose the lesser of two evils. But today, His Majesty should know the principle of choosing the lesser of two evils. He wants Commander of War to sow discord and even control the forces of the big families who were originally loyal to the royal family. With His Majesty's wisdom, he should know. Gong Sun Su said, So, Dongwon is not fighting alone. If it was in normal times, Bao Shiren would be very touched to know that he might have the support of His Majesty. He would say a few words like, "His Majesty is the Son of Heaven." But at this moment, after listening to Gong Sun's explanation, Bao Shiren found that His Majesty might be secretly providing support to him. His feelings were very complicated: irritated, irritable, and even a little disgusted. He gathered his irritated thoughts and sighed softly. But His Majesty will not take sides. His wisdom was like that of His Majesty. He would never personally go to the court, but would check and balance behind the scenes. So, we need strong and powerful helpers. Our opponent is the famous commander of war. If we confront him head-on, we will definitely lose. But this is essentially a trial of a big case. From this point of view, we still have a chance to win, because he is a general and we are constables. Gong Sun said, "The four famous constables have reunited. Maybe we can turn this round." Chapter 878. The Four Famous Arresters. Thinking back to those years, Bao Shiren couldn't help but reveal a smile. As the saying goes, a man in his position must be in charge of his own affairs. These years, as he became an official, he had more and more troubles. Thinking back, the happiest time of his life was the years when he was an arrester in the 6th Fan School. The darkness was blocked by his teacher. They only needed to carry out justice under the light. Time flew. Today, the four famous hunters whose names had shaken the world back then had their own futures. The 6th Fan School had also replaced the old with a new generation. Only the flawless pavilion of Skynet was still engraved with the achievements and legends of the four. The reunion of his best friends was supposed to be a joyous occasion. The reunion of the four famous arresters would also be a big event that would shake the martial arts world. But thinking of this, Lord Bao hesitated. He was not sure if he should drag his old friends into this matter. Moreover, everyone had already drifted apart. Gong Sun knew what was on Dong Wang's mind. So he said, "Among the four famous arresters other than Dong Wang, only Lord Di is still in the imperial court. Now he is the Shaoqing of the Supreme Court. He is in charge of various matters in the prison. He is famous for his cleverness and decisiveness." Bao Shiren sighed softly. As for Miss Ku, she practiced the eternal spring art and became possessed. Her genuine qi reversed the direction of her hands, Shaoyang Meridian. Her appearance gradually changed, and she finally returned to the appearance of a girl. It has been a few years, Gong Sun whispered. In the past few years, she has been following her brother Koboan around the world, visiting doctors and asking for medicine. Her whereabouts are very erratic. The last time I received news about her was a few months ago. Bao Shiren was silent. Then he said slowly, "In other words, only Huaying can help me?" "Not necessarily," Gong Sun replied. "If His Majesty helps, an imperial edict to summon Song back to the imperial court, and Dongwon persuades him, it will not be difficult." "But Miss Ku," Lord Bao shook his head and said, "there's no need to trouble eldest senior sister. Her health is more important." But even so, he still felt that it was a pity. Although his first senior sister was the youngest of the four, she had joined the sect the earliest and had received the most teachings from his esteemed master. Her hidden weapons and leg techniques were the best in the capital, and she was also extremely skilled in disguise and concealment. She was also intelligent and perceptive, and even the most inconspicuous of clues could not escape her eyes. She was a rare helper. In addition, his brother, Koboan, was a grandmaster of external martial arts. His hard qigong was unparalleled under the heavens. His iron shirt, an ordinary external martial art, had been practiced to the peak of perfection by him. His infinite strength and invulnerability were already very troublesome. In addition, Koboan was also good at the art of ingenuity. He had the strengths of metal and fire. Usually, he carried a sealed black iron weapon rack, which was stuffed with all kinds of ingenious weapons. During the battle, he would take them out according to the situation. His enemies did not know what kind of weapon they would face next. It could be said that he was extremely difficult to deal with. With the help of these two siblings, the chances of winning were much higher. But eldest senior sister's health, When Lord Bao thought of this, he saw that Gong Sun Su's face was a bit strange. He could not help but ask, "Teacher?" Gong Sun Su hesitated and said, "Dong Wang." Miss Ku. Bao Shiren waved his hand and said, "Teacher, you don't have to think too much. We don't need to trouble eldest senior sister." "No, Dong Wang, I don't mean that." Gong Sun Su hesitated for a moment and finally said, "Dong Wang, what you need to consider is not how to pull Miss Ku to your side, but how to stop Miss Ku from running to Commander of War's side." Lord Bao was stunned for a moment and said, "What?" Gong Sun Su sighed and said, "Dong Wang, you are confused because you are involved in the situation. Miss Ku is obsessed with practicing martial arts. In the past few years, she has been looking for doctors everywhere for medicine. She has internal injuries, and the secret art of everlasting spring gong cannot be cured by normal medicine. She can only look for a master who has transcended the mortal world to guide her qi and rejuvenate her meridians." Bao Shiren's face changed slightly and said, "You mean turning back into a girl and no longer growing up is a great temptation for many old ladies. But Miss Ku is a beautiful young lady. Her best life has just begun. How can she accept this kind of thing? She has been looking for doctors everywhere for years without any results. I am afraid that she is extremely anxious." Gong Sun Su said, "Only a master who has transcended the mortal world can use his strong internal energy and the realm to know the small details to heal her damaged meridians. Miss Ku has been looking for Dong Wang's master for years without any results. I am afraid that in this world, there is no one who can heal her injuries until now." Bao Shiren closed his eyes and said slowly, "Sun Lang. Yes, Dong Wang has also received the news. He can control the thunder in the city. He is close to an immortal. He can slash thousands of miles with one sword. What happened in Xia province and Qin province may be exaggerated. But tonight, he single-handedly overturned the talented Tensei province. In the past few months, His Majesty has been passive in responding to Commander of War's movements. All signs show that His Majesty and Empress are extremely afraid of Commander of War." Gong Sun Su said, "In summary, I am afraid that the martial arts cultivation of this new Shansei general has reached a level that we can't imagine. With Miss Ku's current state of mind, even if it is a life-saving straw, she will grab it, let alone this one." Bao Shiren sighed softly and said, "With Sun Lang's character, even if it is just to disgust me, he will heal eldest senior sister's injuries and use this as a condition to force her to join." Gong Sun Su looked at Dong Wang and said the second half of what Master Bao was too embarrassed to say in his heart. "With Miss Ku's character, even if it is just for fun, she will happily join the general's army and have a good fight with the 3 junior brothers after confirming that their lives are not in danger. She doesn't even need to be coerced. It is simply too sad." Master Bao was lost in thought for a while, and then said, "Huaying has a bright future. Father Hui no longer cares about worldly affairs. This is my mission alone. There is no need to drag them in. The responsibility of the governor is to protect the people, punish evil, and promote good. Even if I am alone, I will continue to do it." He was silent for a while and said slowly, "Sir, grind the ink for me. I want to write a memorial." Gong Sun Su solemnly bowed and said, "May I ask what Dongwen wants to report?" "The Copper Sparrow Terrace hides evil and tolerates evil. Sun Lang is domineering in the capital. Tonight, all the officials are helpless. Everyone in the capital is speechless. Master Bao is speechless." Bao Shiren's eyes were like lightning. He said decisively, "I want to report Sun Lang for gathering his private army to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace. I want to report the aristocratic families for disregarding human life." Gong Sun Su took a deep breath and bowed again. This student obeys. Tonight, the capital government was silent. Master Bao's study room was brightly lit. The 4 imperial bodyguards and yamen runners were patrolling around. Zhang Zhao was lying on the roof with her legs crossed. She was bored and looked at the moonlight. Her fluffy ears drooped down and her tail was swinging lazily. Under the moonlight, the beautiful silhouette of a cat-eared girl could be seen. A cat's curiosity was very big. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the first brothel patron who was detained by the government finally signed his name, paid his name, and stepped out of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. This handsome brothel patron was carefully selected by Sun Lang and others. He had the function of a microphone. Under the watchful eyes of the public in the dark, the brothel patron stood on the wide road in front of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He was slightly trembling in the night wind. His face was full of fear and confusion. His mood at this time must be very complicated. God has pity on him. He was just the son of an ordinary aristocratic family in the capital. Tonight, he followed his friends to the Copper Sparrow Terrace to broaden his horizons. Moreover, it was the first time in his life that he visited a brothel. Tonight, he had already met the young lady that he liked. His friends also helped him to greet her. This meant that everything was settled. After drinking a few more glasses of wine and chatting for a while, when it was a little later, he could walk up the stairs of the adults. The alcohol gradually became stronger, and his mind wandered. The young lady had already sat down close to him. He still remembered the smile on the young lady's face. He still remembered the fragrance and heat coming from her body. That gentle smile, that shy face. His heart was beating wildly. His mouth was dry. He could not speak a complete sentence. He just wanted to brew the most passionate words of love in the world to tell the person beside him. However, just as he was gathering his courage, he heard a huge explosion, and the words anti-vice. At first, he did not know what anti-vice meant, but soon he knew. He deliberately left the historic moment of adulthood to the most prosperous brothel in the world. As a result, he encountered something that he would never forget. He met the most famous hero of Tianyuan in the world in the best brothel in the world and experienced the most powerful anti-vice operation in the world. The first time he visited a brothel in his life, he encountered the iron fist of the people's democratic dictatorship. One punch shattered his beautiful fantasy of the brothel. It was enough to give him the courage of his next life. It could be imagined that the experience of visiting a brothel for the first time in his life would become a nightmare that could not be dispersed. It would linger in the sky of this brothel for the rest of his life. Every time he looked at the brothel, the righteous anti-vice operation would shock the depths of his soul again. It must be like this, because not only did he encounter this anti-vice operation, but he also met the commander-in-chief of the anti-vice operation at a close distance. When General Shunsei heard that it was his first time visiting a brothel, he specially called him over. He guided him patiently and told him many truths of life. General Sun's sincere tone and moving speech deeply touched his heart. He felt ashamed and wanted to shave his hair and become a monk on the spot, dedicating the rest of his life to the love of all living beings. Then he was released. What he did not know was that he was the first brothel customer to be released and that he was personally received by General Sunday. He saw many things and heard many things. These were all things that General Sun wanted him to see and hear. He was going to become a mouthpiece, a narrator. This young master from an ordinary landowning family in the capital had become a star in the eyes of all the officials in the capital the moment he stepped out of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He was going to relay General Shen's words. He was going to relay to everyone in the capital the truth. He was going to tell them that General Shunsei, Sun Lang, needed them to believe this truth. Chapter 879. In an ordinary house in the Green Music House, the light was on in the study. Di Huaying, then the vice official of the Supreme Court, put down the letter in his hand and tapped the table. He stared at the wind lantern in front of him, lost in thought. The letter was sent by his best friend and superior. As one of the three heads of the Ministry of Justice and an important official of the Imperial Court, the Minister of the Supreme Court naturally had the right to receive such a confidential letter. Di Huaying, as the vice official of the Supreme Court, didn't have the right to receive such a confidential letter. Therefore, he was both moved and grateful. Di Huaying knocked on the table and suddenly laughed. The Sky Demon is hidden in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Only he could think of that. Lord D said in a low voice, "This is simply like saying, I've already made up an excuse. Whoever doesn't believe me, come out after smashing things up." Alas, His Majesty's hands aren't nimble enough. He actually messed things up like this. He read the letter again. After confirming that he didn't miss anything, He picked up the glass cover of the wind lantern and lit the letter above the fire. Di Huaying fell into deep thought as he watched the letter being swallowed by the fire. There was a lot of content in the letter, including the capital governor Bao Shiren's night visit to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion and his angry departure. Junior brother, you're unyielding and unyielding, just like Junior Brother's song. You'd rather break than bend, but you're even more stubborn than Junior Brother's song. That's why he resigned and returned home after seeing through it, but you still want to stay. I've said before that the way of officialdom is to be flexible. If you don't understand, your future path will be more and more difficult. What do you think? Am I right? After brushing the ashes to the ground, Di Huaying shook her head and said, Jiaying came with such ferocious momentum that there will definitely be a great upheaval in the capital. As the capital governor, you will bear the brunt of this matter. With your temperament, you will naturally not allow that person to cause trouble without restraint. However, he can suppress the emperor and the heavenly policy mansion. How can you be his opponent? His expression became more and more worried. It's not a big deal if a person is defeated. Victory and defeat are common in war. But if the heart is defeated, everything will be over. And that person always advocates attacking the heart. Di Huaying thought for a while, but in the end, she shook her head and sighed. There were too few things to think about. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. Even he did not have any clue on how to defeat the enemy. Therefore, he could only wait. If you want the horse to run, you have to feed it grass. If you want us to run faster than this 1,000-mile colt, you have to feed it eggs mixed with soybeans. Di Huaying leaned against the back of the chair and muttered, Your Majesty, I'm afraid you want to use us as pawns to cross the river. That's not impossible, but this time, you have to watch your table manners. You have to know that no matter how docile a horse is, it will still kick its hind legs when forced into a corner. At this moment, in Sichuan of Qin Prefecture, the land was dark and gloomy, but the Bai clan castle was brightly lit. It was as if it was daytime. The Sword Scar had become a holy land for martial artists. News of it spread like wildfire. Every day, martial artists from all over the Qin Prefecture would come to observe the battle. They were all mesmerized by the sword strike that had seemingly transcended the mortal realm. There were also martial artists from other prefectures who came from other prefectures. At this moment, the deep-rooted bad habits of the human world erupted. This sword fell in Qin Prefecture, so naturally it belonged to the people of Qin Prefecture. The four martial artists hurriedly scrammed. Because of this, countless verbal disputes broke out, and even weapons were used. Wei Zhongxian and the others set the rules as quickly as possible. First of all, this was the home of Bai Castle. The Sword Saint's insignia was still very useful. Next, General Wang Wuan's troops were nearby. Wei Zhongxian and the others were all experts in martial arts. The sword of K2 also flew back. With the sword in hand, Xie Wei was equivalent to half a 7 luminary sword saint. Coupled with the deterrence of Sun Lang's fame, he could still control the situation. But tonight, 2 uninvited guests who did not follow the rules came straight to this place. Under the illumination of the fire, dozens of martial artists surrounded them as if they were facing a great enemy. They looked at a strong man who was like an iron tower with fear in their eyes. This person was wrapped in cold iron armor from head to toe and carried an extremely heavy iron box on his back. He looked like a steel monster. From head to toe, he probably weighed more than 1,000 pounds, but this monster was as light as a swallow and could move freely. Previously, they did not agree with each other, so the 2 sides immediately attacked. This person's movement technique was like a thunderclap. He grabbed one person and threw them far away. Everyone saw that his iron armor was impenetrable. Some of the internal martial arts cultivators approached him and used the hitting cow technique to blast out soft energy. This was the nemesis of heavy armor. There was a rumor in Jianghu that after the war, various countries fought over the Sky Demon's legacy and small-scale conflicts broke out. The sacred knight, Li Hua, was wearing heavy armor and was difficult to be injured by swords and spears. Most of his internal organs were shattered, and he died under the soft force of the earth goddess's soft palm. It was better than blunt weapons. But after a few moves of the soft palm penetrated the armor, the armored man was not hurt at all. Everyone fought for a while, and then found out that this bastard was actually practicing the Iron Mantle. Mother F asterisk her, weren't those who practiced the Golden Bell Shield and Iron Mantle the idiots who were bare-chested in the cold weather? Why did he start to wear armor? Seeing that they couldn't beat the armored man, those who were more active turned their gazes to the other side. Walking with the armored man was a girl. She was short and looked weak. Previously, she was sitting on the armored man's shoulder. Now, she was squatting on the ground and carefully looking at the sword marks on the ground. She looked like a soft persimmon that could be pinched and weighed. But before he could take a few steps forward, the little girl raised her hand without turning her head. Short needles as thin as a cow's hair shot out like lightning and pierced into the assailant's neck in the blink of an eye. In a short time, the man sat crookedly on the ground as if he was drunk. His head hung down, and soon he was snoring loudly. Everyone was stunned by this wonderful hidden weapon technique. Then they saw the strange appearance of the victim sitting on the ground and sleeping. Then they remembered a Jianghu legend from a few years ago. Someone whispered, "Could it be her?" The girl stood up and clapped her hands. Her cheeks were tender, her lips were red, and her skin was as white as milk. But her hair was combed like a beautiful lady's. She stretched slightly. Her lips were red, her teeth were white, and her eyes were bright. Her immature body was like a flower bud, but her movements had the charm of a young girl. She looked very cute. 80% of normal people would look forward to her appearance when she grew up, and the remaining 20% of perverts would gasp excitedly when they saw her appearance now. But the people present were not in this category. They had already guessed the girl's identity. The girl ignored these people and said directly, "It can't be wrong. It's Jiang. He used to dominate the 6 armies with his swordsmanship. Now he has become even more terrifying." The armored man's voice was warm and magnetic. He sounded like a very charming man, not at all like a fool who practiced the iron shirt. "Do you want to find him?" The little girl nodded her head vigorously. Of course. If this sword strike really came from him in the summer region, then it means that his martial arts realm and inner strength cultivation are almost invincible. This is probably my last hope. If even he can't do it, then I can only be a little girl for the rest of my life. Speaking of this, a gloomy expression appeared on her delicate face. I've raised my beautiful body for more than 20 years. I haven't had time to benefit some bastard, and now it's gone. This is not something a good girl should say. Caboan had a headache. His precious little sister's situation was very special. It was not only her body that had shrunk, but also her mental age. When a mature soul was trapped in a small body, it would naturally breed subtle things. Over the years, he had seen with his own eyes that the bad habits that once belonged to a child had returned to his little sister. Willfulness, mischief, playfulness, and childlike words carried no harm. But the legal lowly turned a deaf ear to her brother's advice. She had lost the power of an adult, so it was natural for her to enjoy the power of a child. This was very fair. She waved her small hand. Since this is true, let's go back to the capital. Caboan had accompanied his sister all these years to travel the world, visit doctors, and ask for medicine. But this time he hesitated. The girl raised her eyebrows. "What's wrong? Do you want to go?" The armored man looked at the long and narrow sword mark on the ground that extended from his feet to both sides. Just by looking at this mark, he could imagine the scene at that time. The sword chi that penetrated the heaven and earth covered thousands of miles, galloping on the ground and in the sky, breaking through the clouds with the power of wind and thunder. What an earth-shattering attack. With such power, just looking at this mark made his heart sway. He wondered how the people who faced this sword that day would feel. It was like a sword slashed by an immortal. He slowly said, "If the opponent is this person, I can't protect your safety." The girl was stunned at first, then she shook her head and smiled. "Want to fight with that guy?" Caboan smiled and said, "If he doesn't treat you, you will definitely quarrel with him. With your temper and tongue, if you quarrel with him, you will definitely expose his shortcomings. If he is angered by your words, the 2 sides will definitely fight. Once they fight, I will be the one to fight. This time, I will definitely lose." Ha ha, you think too much. The little princess of the Cove family threw a flirtatious look and put on a beautiful face. She smiled and said, I'm so cute. Why won't he treat me? Can he bear do that? A young woman in her 20s who knew everything was living in the body of a little girl who was less than 10 years old. What happened? Just by looking at her face now, one could tell. Koboan sighed. Little Lolita leaped up and landed on her brother's shoulder. She patted his helmet and said, Let's go. I heard that old eunuch Wei is in charge of the Bai clan fort. Let's go and get some information from him. Chapter 880. The Copper Sparrow Terrace welcomed new guests. They were not here to visit prostitutes, but to pick up people. After dilly-dallying, they finally came. Tonight, the news of Commander of War attacking the Copper Sparrow Terrace had already spread throughout the imperial capital. Many officials and nobles sat up in shock from their spring dreams and quickly gathered their family members to check and interrogate them one by one to see if there were any dead children who did not look at the almanac when visiting prostitutes and ran into this once-in-a-thousand-years sharp sword operation. Those who did not have anything happen at home rejoiced and took the opportunity to reprimand their family members, telling them to be careful when they were on the street. They were careful not to run into someone and become a human flesh prop to show off and slap people's faces. And those who found out that their family members were trapped at the Copper Sparrow Terrace felt as disgusted as if they had eaten feces. It was foreseeable that the brothel patrons who were implicated in Shinto province's anti-prostitution and illegal activities would be devastated like a storm when they returned home. They would not stop until they broke 10 feather dusters. But originally, it was only to the extent of eating feces. Although they felt disgusted, they were not too anxious. Wasn't just being kidnapped by that madman. Could he kill people? Moreover, this fellow privately mobilized troops to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Not only did he despise the imperial power, but he also offended many important officials in the imperial court who had interests involved. No matter what his purpose was, there would be a large group of people waiting to deal with him in the future. Therefore, they only needed to watch the show and wait for him to dig his own grave. But what they did not expect was that this feces was actually mixed with a strong poison. Not long after the initial panic, the nobles and nobles who were sitting calmly at home received a very explosive news. The Copper Sparrow Terrace had just released the first hostage. It was an ordinary nobleman's son. This frightened boy confessed a few terrifying things. He said that the reason Commander of War, Jia Ying, led troops to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace tonight was because there were remnants of the Sky Demon hidden in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. He had already controlled the situation and was investigating everyone's suspicions. It was said that this time the involvement was so wide and deep that it could almost turn half of the imperial court upside down. Sky Demon, the extraterritorial calamity that had plagued the world for decades, had taken several generations. The flames of war continued endlessly. Countless people had lost their lives, and countless heroes had sacrificed their lives. Under such circumstances, colluding with the extraterritorial demons was a crime that was even more serious than rebelling. After all, if they wanted to rebel, they could find a few reasons to justify it. However, if they colluded with the Sky Demon, they would be considered traitors through and through. They would be beasts who had forgotten their ancestors and would be punished by everyone. Many officials jumped up in fright when they heard this. Son of AB asterisk TCH, your F asterisk King Ruthless. Many people could no longer sit still. After all, it was one thing to be implicated in the confrontation between Commander of War and the Emperor, but it was another thing to be suspected of colluding with the Sky Demon. Originally, they had all wanted to keep their distance from Sun Lang and wait for the wind to blow. However, once the news about the Sky Demon was released, everyone could no longer sit still. The officials with weaker mental fortitude and family background didn't dare to take this risk. They gritted their teeth and asked their family members to prepare carriages. They anxiously rushed to the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The #1 brothel in the world was once again bustling with activity, welcoming wave after wave of distinguished guests. If it was at any other time, the managers of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion would surely be grinning from ear to ear. But now, they were unable to protect themselves, and all of them were perturbed. This was the sorrow of a nobody. They could only hope that Sun Lang would keep his promise and not allow them to suffer cruel and horrifying revenge. General Shansei, who hadn't yet taken office, cordially received people from all walks of life in the capital's #1 clubhouse. He warmly sent his greetings that he hadn't seen in a long time and had cordial conversations with people from all walks of life. General Shansei was very concerned about the political environment and the atmosphere of the officialdom in the imperial capital. He put forward passionate battle propositions, such as if you don't want to kill the Sky Demon, don't become an official, and those who collude with the Sky Demon are all bastards without eyes. He also sincerely invited people from all walks of life to join his declaration of the fight against the Sky Demon. It had to be said that the banner of political correctness was really too useful. Every wave of the banner was accurate. This is only a declaration of the fight against the Sky Demon to the end. We will never wallow in the mire with the Sky Demon. We will never collude with the Sky Demon. We will kill all the Sky Demons and not leave a single one. Is this declaration wrong? Why don't you want to sign it? Do you have sympathy for the Sky Demon? Are you disloyal? Let me tell you, loyalty isn't absolute. It is absolute disloyalty. In Empress Hutu and even the entire world, no one dared to refuse this declaration. Who would dare to say that the Sky Demon shouldn't be killed in the Empire? This was worse than shouting 100 times in the Times Square of the United States. Therefore, the big shots who couldn't keep their cool and took the bait could only hold back their tears and swallow their saliva. This is called scheming. The Emperor doesn't care what you sign. He only knows that you want to visit Sun Lang and sign the little book he took out. No matter how you think about it, it seems like you're pledging your allegiance to him. Emperors were naturally suspicious by nature. This thorn stabbed into the hearts of both sides at the same time. It was too disgusting. Of course, they weren't to be trifled with. During the cordial conversation with General Shinsei, they raised the question they were most concerned about. You said there was a Sky Demon. What about the corpse? What about the evidence? What about the witnesses? General Shinsei, brought out the secrecy regulations. He said that before the truth came to light, they couldn't casually reveal the top secrets of the imperial court. Otherwise, it would be easy to inadvertently alert the enemy and leak the secrets. Naturally, this didn't convince everyone. Instead, it raised suspicions. They guessed that Sun Lang didn't have any substantial evidence. They originally didn't believe the nonsense about the Sky Demon hiding in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Therefore, they tactfully questioned him. After all, everything required evidence. Sun Lang was already prepared for this. He had already prepared a tube of detergent. However, this method was too shameless and could only be used as a last resort. After all, General Shansei was a dignified person. Shameless methods could only be used at the last moment. He took the opportunity to start his trap. First, he said, the Emperor also knows about this. Why don't you go to the palace and ask him? This stopped most people's mouths. When faced with a few powerful people, he also had a way. Your Excellency, you are a pillar of the imperial court. You have a wide circle of friends and are highly respected. When you raise your arm, you will gather as many followers as you can. You are a very good partner for justice. I just happen to need the help of such a person. How about this? Your Excellency, you will swear an oath that after you see the evidence, you will bet your life on it and do your best to help me investigate this matter. No matter who is in cahoots with the Sky Demon, you must exterminate their entire family and exterminate their entire family. If you dare to shrink back or shirk halfway through, you will be considered a traitor. Even if your entire family is exterminated, you will have no complaints. Your Excellency, if you write a blood oath, I will treat you as a comrade. I will immediately bring you to see the evidence. The important people who cherish their reputation seemed to understand something from Sun Lang's meaningful smile. They were very timid and naturally skipped this topic. Sun Lang also didn't pursue the matter. However, there was no evidence, so it appeared too guilty. Therefore, Sun Lang still had a way. He waved his hand and said to the doubtful officials, "The capital governor, Bao Shiren, has already come to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. He is a good friend of mine and is very trustworthy. I have already shown him the evidence." He was filled with righteous indignation and raged with anger. He swore that he will investigate this matter thoroughly. Furthermore, he has been in the government for a long time and knows how to prioritize. If you are really curious, you can ask him about the situation of this case. It had to be said that Bao Shiren had been rampaging in the imperial capital these past few years, waving the banner of the Empress Dowager's law. He didn't give face to anyone. Although many people didn't like this guy, they had to admit that Bao Shiren's character and personality were very, very good. If it was him, he could be trusted. At the very least, he was more trustworthy than someone else. Lord Bao, who had been working late into the night in the capital government, should be feeling a little stifled. After tonight's defeat and confusion, he had steeled his resolve. He would stick to his path and fight with the devious and cunning Sun Lang in a fair and just manner. At this moment, he was passionately waving his brush and writing line after line of impassioned words. He, who was no longer young, wanted to once again become the enemy of the entire world. However, before the night was over, the hot-blooded Lord Bao had already suffered a blow from a treacherous official. Lord Bao and Mr. Gongsun were dumbfounded as they faced the important officials of the court who had come to visit. After they asked about the purpose of their visit, the master and servant's complex feelings were indescribable. They had still underestimated Sun Lang's shamelessness and despicable scoundrel. A mouthful of old blood was stuck in their hearts. They were filled with anger that they couldn't vent. After all, although Lord Bao was stubborn, he wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was very smart. He understood what Sun Lang wanted to do. He had actually used his opponent's reputation to support himself. He was truly shameless to the extreme. However, Lord Bao couldn't tell the truth. If he directly said that the Sky Demon was fake and that Sun Lang's so-called evidence was a group of noble clans torturing the innocent, cruel, and bloodthirsty like animals, and that Sun Lang only wanted to take the opportunity to cause trouble, then Lord Bao wouldn't wallow in the mire with Sun Lang. He wanted to openly bring those traitorous animals to justice and reveal the truth to the world. That would definitely cause a huge uproar. Lord Bao could only let the guilty noble clans be prepared. After all, his enemy wasn't just the cunning Sun Lang. There is also the ugly and despicable dark side of human nature, as well as this indescribably filthy world. In the face of everyone's questions, Lord Bao could only vaguely answer. His face was full of smiles, but his heart was full of curses. His ambiguous attitude and vague words were even more problematic. When everyone saw this, they became even more bewildered. Damn, looking at Blackie Bao's expression, there was clearly something going on. With his personality, he definitely wouldn't lie. In other words, there really was something going on. That night, the imperial capital learned of two more things. First, Shinsei General Sun Lang had raided the Copper Sparrow Pavilion to hunt down the remnants of the Sky Demon. According to Governor Bao Shiren, this seemed to be true. There was conclusive evidence in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Second, in order to thoroughly investigate this matter, Blackie Bao had joined forces with Commander of War. Chapter 881. The night passed, and the sky gradually brightened. After a busy and talkative night, Sun Lang sent off the last batch of guests and watched the low-key carriage disappear at the end of the street. He could faintly hear the sounds of fighting and begging for mercy coming from the carriage. Lust was a knife. In order to visit prostitutes, many old and young men paid a heavy price last night. Friends who did not sign quickly enough and were not absolutely loyal were viciously treated by calling their parents. Those who were married were picked up by their wives. Those who were unmarried were picked up by their parents. And those who were old were picked up by their children and grandchildren. Those who held important positions in the imperial court and were stubborn and loyal to the emperor not only had their whole family picked up, but also their competitors and enemies in the workplace had to be called over and asked in person why this comrade was so uninterested in the work of expelling the Sky Demon and eliminating the root of the problem. Could he be trusted in his political background? After all, The officialdom was like a battlefield. How could he not be punished? Who didn't have a few enemies? The opinions of the victims? Damn, you're not willing to cooperate or sign. It's good enough that I didn't beat you into a sky demon. People who can't be won over are potential enemies. Of course, I have to make you unhappy. As for making enemies, Mother of Asterisk Cur, I only have 3 enemies. The Emperor, the Emperor's concubine, and the Providence Heavenly Devil. Who the F***CK do you think you are? How dare you make an enemy out of me? The shockwaves from my fight with the Emperor could kill 3,000 of you. That's about it. After the prostitutes who were detained last night were identified and cleared of suspicion, most of them were released. The rest were big fish and thorns. The incident at the Copper Sparrow Terrace, which startled the capital and caused sleepless nights, also came to an end. But everyone knew that it was just the beginning. Sun Lang was very leisurely. He sat calmly because he secretly spread the news that the General of Shunsei had the account book of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. In theory, any customer who had spent money at the Copper Sparrow Terrace was a potential suspect. Although he got net last night, there must be many regular customers who did not come last night, so they did not make it in time. For these people, he might summon or visit them one by one. Of course, who to summon and who to visit depended on the situation and the specific situation. It depends on the situation. Many of the high-ranking officials and nobles who had visited the Copper Sparrow Terrace cursed in their hearts. They couldn't help but feel somewhat flustered. This bastard was brandishing the big club used to exterminate the Sky Demon's remnants, embracing righteousness as if he had unlimited investigative and law enforcement authority. It was as if the words, "I choose law enforcement," were written all over his face. If you don't want me to bring people to stop you at home and ask you in front of your wife and children how many times you went to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion and who you fucked, you'd better know your place and do what you should do. You know, this was a hint to the people who had once fought at the Copper Sparrow Terrace. It could be said to be very disgusting. Those who could visit the Copper Sparrow Terrace were either rich or noble. None of them were ordinary people. Some of them were afraid and flustered, while others were not willing to be threatened like this. Their thoughts were different, so they would take different actions. There was strength in numbers. When people with the same goal gathered together, an invisible storm was brewing. Sun Lang did not care about this. Or rather, he was looking forward to more people being involved in this game. The more people there were, the more fun it would be. His next small goal was to officially decide this matter in the Imperial Court. As the General of Shunsei, he would be fully in charge of the investigation of the Sky Demon's remnants. He would also publicize the heroic version of the battle after the Great Desolate Mountain, portraying himself as a hero who had silently pursued the Sky Demon's remnants for 2 years. His chances of winning were very high. First, he was the marshal with the highest military achievements back then. He was the famous general who was best at fighting the Sky Demon among the 6 armies. He had also pursued the Sky Demon's remnants for 2 years and was willing to give up everything for the sake of a hero's image. As the General of Shunsei, it was natural for him to be in charge of this matter. Second, as the newly appointed General of Shunsei, his treatment and rank were all comparable to that of Tensei Province. His position was higher than that of nobles, and he had great power. However, the political cake in the imperial capital had been divided 2 years ago. When he returned, it would inevitably lead to a new power struggle and arouse the natural wariness of the other imperial court heavyweights. Since this was the case, he would use this condition to exchange for their support. If anyone dared to disagree, they would join forces with the other heavyweights to eat his cake. As for where they would eat the cake after this matter was over, the Emperor's cake, the Royalist's cake. They could eat whoever they wanted. It was simply wonderful. Third, the so-called hiding of the Sky Demon at the Copper Sparrow Terrace, in the eyes of most people who understood, was actually a very clumsy joke. In their hearts, they would not take it seriously. But this was the main point of the problem. This was Sun Lang's goal. In the eyes of most smart people, the surprise attack on the Copper Sparrow Terrace and the claim that the remnants of the Sky Demon had returned was just an excuse for Sun Lang to attack the Copper Sparrow Terrace. It was a clever plan to provoke the emperor and disintegrate the royalists. It was a crude but miraculous political method. But only a few people knew that this was not a joke. And this was Sun Lang's goal. He prepared, he made a fuss, he pushed, he looked forward to everything. He looked forward to the expressions and reactions of more people after everything was revealed. He looked forward to it very much. Is this what it means to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? Pongji pushed open the half-closed door and poked his head out with a smile. How does it feel to be the general of Shunsei? Coming and going, wealth and honor, hard work, endless people to see, endless official documents to approve. Sun Lang stretched. It can't be more tiring than when I was the marshal. Moreover, the most tiring time is only the initial stage. I have to do everything myself. When a stage is set up and the helpers are almost all here, I can hand over the complicated matters to my subordinates and devote more energy to the battle of wits and courage with the emperor and empress. Fighting with the emperor is endless fun. Imperial Tutor Pang walked in with a smile. He picked up a chair and sat down across from Sun Lang's table. Do you want to transfer me to Shinto province? If it's the chief clerk, I can consider it. Sun Lang looked at him with disdain. Naz, you talk big when you eat chili. You want to be the chief clerk? You think too highly of yourself. You can continue to beat people in the censorate. Pongji was startled. You don't need us to help you? Sun Lang waved his hand. You all originally had official positions and seem to be developing well. Why did you leave your connections and efforts behind and come to me to start a new career? Think about it. You all have a boss now and a backer. It's a good opportunity to go on a rampage in your original positions and take revenge. For example, you have me to protect you in the future. Can't you beat up whoever you want? Thinking about it, it was true. Instead of gathering together, it was better to keep their original positions. They could cooperate with each other in the imperial court. However, Pongji still felt that it was a pity. I feel that it's better to work under you. For example, last night was so satisfying. The soldiers cultivated for a night. Not only were they not tired at all, but they were also in high spirits. They had done earth-shattering things together. Thinking about it now, they still felt their blood boil. Last night, they ran rampant in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Following a good boss, not only did they have meat to eat, but they also had face slaps and the opportunity to act tough. What more could they ask for? Sun Lang smiled. It's almost the same. Look at the model of Tensei province. Moreover, if you're not happy in the censorate and want to come, I'll welcome you. There's always something to do. Pongji knocked on the table. He was a cautious and wise man who liked to think. Before thinking about victory, he had to think about defeat. Although there is an imperial edict of Shinto province, it hasn't been announced to the world yet. The general's official uniform, ceremonial guards, residence, authority, and so on have not been prepared yet. It's better to get this done as soon as possible. There will be a court meeting tomorrow. Marshal, what do you plan to do? Sun Lang smiled. Of course I'm going to the morning court meeting. There's even a morning court meeting? You're really one of the best in the empire. Pongji's expression was subtle, but there was also a hint of anticipation. Those who had been with Sun Lang before were all people who liked to watch a good show. Just thinking about it made him feel very excited. Right now, the emperor definitely doesn't want to face me directly. The ministers in the court aren't prepared to see me either. Moreover, I came uninvited and directly came to the morning court meeting. Sun Lang snorted. However, this is how war should be. The more your enemy doesn't want you to do something, the more you have to do it. Imperial Tutor Pang said, Then let's get ready to watch a good show. Sun Lang tidied up the pile of white paper on the table. I'm also looking forward to it. Pongji stretched his neck to take a look. What's that? Sun Lang picked up the stack of papers in his hand and waved them around. These are some of my thoughts on Shinto province, including the authority and functions of each department. It's rare for the emperor to be so generous, so we shouldn't be polite to him. Imperial Tutor Pang took a few pieces of paper and looked at them. He smiled and said, I heard that the marshal has given a lot of valuable opinions on the personnel planning and department design of Tensei province. Sun Lang smiled without a care. She only learned the David's dear. Watch me beat her up. Panji looked at the proposal and felt a little dizzy. He knew all the words on it, but when they were put together, they were too unfamiliar. However, he could still force himself to continue reading. What SHIELD? Heavenly Sword Game, 6th Maneuver Course. It was a mess, but it really seemed like it. What's going on? Panji pointed at a blank piece of paper. Blessing Department. This name is a bit strange, and there's no description of the department. Who is White Snow Taoist? But I've never heard of this person. What does this department do? Cause and Effect Strategic Strike Department. I guess it's like this. Sun Lang reached out and grabbed a few pieces of paper. These are just drafts. We'll slowly perfect them. Before he finished speaking, Android walked in from outside. I say, did you forget something? Sun Lang was puzzled. Huh? Aren't you going to meet your nephews and nieces? Chapter 882. Hearing Fatty Ann's words, Sun Lang remembered that there was indeed such a thing. Last night, when he was cracking down on prostitution and illegal activities, he had blocked the poor Zhongxun's eye. At that time, there were other people in the room, other than the manager of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion who was kicked to death by him. There were also 3 background characters. At that time, the general was in a state of excitement after successfully acting tough. He felt like the world was a force to be reckoned with. How could he care less about the passers-by? No matter who they were, he would detain them and slowly deal with them later. After sweeping the Copper Sparrow Pavilion with his tyrannical iron fist, the general climbed to a new peak of showing off. He beat people in front of the gate of Heaven Influence and behaved atrociously in Tensei Province. After asking about the well-being of the Imperial Guards and Tensei officials, he ran back to the brothel to preach about fighting spirit and the policy of killing the Sky Demon. After that, he chatted and laughed with the capital's mayor and public figures. As a result, he was very busy and completely forgot about the 3 children. Now that android came in and mentioned it, he suddenly came back to his senses. Last night, Fatty Ann had already taken the time to tell him that this was a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. The 2 nephews and niece came to the capital for the first time out of curiosity and came to the capital's #1 brothel to broaden their horizons. Unexpectedly, before they could broaden their horizons, the cheap uncle that they had never met brought a large group of people and turned the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, which was known as the #1 brothel in the capital and had an extremely thick network of connections, upside down. The nature of this matter was equivalent to the 3. Forget it. This analogy was not appropriate. Let's change it. It was as if 3 young nobles from Corsica had entered a famous brothel in the last year of the 18th century on the Rue de Navajon in the 9th arrondissement of Paris out of curiosity. Suddenly, they heard the sound of military bugles all over the street. Not long after, Napoleon Bonaparte, who should have been in Egypt commanding the army of the East to beat up the Turks, suddenly broke into the brothel with his old guards. It was very awkward, very scary, very deep impression. The brothel patrons were caught red-handed. At most, they did not check the almanac before going out. The situation of the 3 children was even worse, because the person who was caught red-handed might become their cheap uncle. That's right, these 3 poor children were the eldest son and daughter of the Sun family of Jiangdong. Since the Shinsei general was going to recognize his ancestors and return to his family, and change his surname to Sun, there was not a single noble family surnamed Sun in the world that did not have a rousing spirit. As long as they firmly held onto this golden, shining thigh, then at least 50 years of glory, splendor, wealth, and rank were just around the corner. As long as they could carry the senior general's name back into the family tree and pull him into their family, then everything would be settled. The only thing to worry about was the general's rather subtle political stance and attitude towards the imperial family. This also made many of the Sun family shrink back. After all, in this world, there were stories of people celebrating together, but there were also precedents of 9 generations being implicated. The political risk of relying on relatives made some families hesitate, but this became an opportunity for others. The head of the Sun family of Jiangdong, Sun Wentai, was indeed worthy of being called the Tiger of Jiangdong. He was indeed a tiger. He decisively placed a bet on Sun Lang. After the incident in Jinling, he was the first person to offer an olive branch. Taking advantage of the geographical proximity, he became the most popular and most suitable choice. It must be said that this Sun Wentai was indeed very bold. When he went to Jinling to mourn the old madam, he did not mention a single word about this matter. After leaving Jinling, he sent someone to send a letter to Sun Lang, calling him brother. He invited Sun Lang to the capital to discuss the important matter of recognizing his ancestors. Yes, right under the nose of the emperor. The determination, boldness, and sincerity contained in this proposal were all very great. It was a stark contrast to the other flirtatious people who were hesitant to make a decision. Not only that, Sun Wentai also sent his two favorite sons to the capital in advance to wait for Sun Lang. One was a scholar, and the other was a martial artist. In the future, they would follow by Sun Lang's side and listen to his orders. Unfortunately, even with all this scheming, he was still cheated in the end. He never would have thought that the children he was most proud of would be caught red-handed by Sun Lang while they were visiting a brothel. Not only that, they were caught at a banquet with King Zhongshuan. King Zhongshuan was the person who directly caused the changes in Jinling and was also involved in the death of old Madame Shi. This was simply too deceitful. If they were not beaten to death after the incident, then they must be his biological children. Sun Lang looked at the three nervous young men in front of him. The leader had a robust body and an imposing appearance. In the words of the literati, he was a very handsome man. The second son, Fong Yi, had a big mouth and a somewhat apologetic appearance. However, his eyes were awe-inspiring and his temperament was confident. He was worthy of the words extraordinarily handsome. And the youngest one was clearly a woman dressed as a man. In this day and age, if a woman dressed as a man and no one could tell, it would either be because her body hair was stuck all over her face or because her body hair was growing all over her face. There was no third possibility. In dramas, there were women dressed as men and the men could not tell. If this really happened in real life, then there was only one reason. The man saw through her but did not say anything. He was a pervert. He must have wanted to beat her at her own game and deliberately take advantage of her stupid sister. Sun Lang was the world's love saint. He could travel through flowers, but not a single leaf would stick to his body. He had long become indifferent to women who could not be touched. It could be said that he had no interest in them at all. He looked at the three people in front of him and said, "Sit." The three sons from the Sun family of Jiangdong were like primary school students who had made a mistake. They did not dare to be so polite. They had already introduced themselves before, and even the little sister of the Sun family directly said her real name. The eldest brother, Sun Bofu, smiled bitterly and said, "In front of you, we'd better stand and talk." General. They really had mixed feelings in their hearts. The young people were very proud. When they heard about their father's idea, they were very unhappy. After all, they had lived in Jiangdong since they were young. Every day, they flew eagles, rode horses, fought dogs, and hunted. Countless people praised them. They were used to living a life of being above others. Naturally, they were arrogant. Now that they heard their father say that he wanted to recognize a relative, and it was their own family who went to do it, this was not a big deal. They were clearly in their 20s, but they actually wanted to call their father brother. Even they were a generation younger. Why? This idea had completely disappeared last night. They completely understood, and they knew exactly what was going on. After one night, the fear in their hearts calmed down a little. If it had been last night, not to mention uncles, even if Sun Lang wanted to be a grandfather, they would most likely nod and say yes. Sun Lang smiled and said, "Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. I know you are afraid. If I tell your father about what happened yesterday, I'm afraid you will be beaten to death when you go back. You know we are nervous, but you still say that." The poor children of the Sun family didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They heard the general say, "I have already asked Zhongshuan Zai about what happened last night. You were shot while lying down. Those who don't know are not guilty. It's just that you were a little negligent and scared for a whole night. It can be considered a small punishment." That matter. Let's stop here. The three siblings hurriedly bowed and thanked him. Sun Lang smiled and waved his hand. He was in a good mood because this feeling was a little special. If it went well, the three children in front of him were likely to become his nephews and nieces. Now that they were carefully and obediently being scolded in front of him, it gave him a sense of dignity and satisfaction as an elder. After all, when he was a Jiaing, the Jia family was very sparse. Other than putting on the airs of an elder brother and scolding his younger brother, there was no other fun to speak of. Damn, what happened to being a backward feudal family head? Therefore, he took the opportunity to put on airs and teach these juniors some principles of life. Although this is the case, a brothel is indeed not a good place. In the future, it is better to go less. The two nephews nodded repeatedly. What else could they say? The youngest of the three was called Sun Shangxiang. She was born in a martial arts family and was spoiled by her parents. Now, she was at the age where she was lively and active. Seeing that Sun Lang was gentle, generous, and steady in his speech, and was able to scold her two arrogant brothers into obedient children with just a few words, she, who was familiar with her brother's temperament, was surprised and amused. Even her curiosity about Sun Lang suppressed her fear. Hearing this, she gathered her courage and asked, General, have you never been to a brothel? I have. Sun Lang pointed to the table in front of him. Haven't I been here before? No, I mean you haven't been here before. Sun Xiaomei was hesitating about which word to use. After all, she was a virgin, and she was in front of outsiders. Even though she was used to being lawless, she was embarrassed to say the word prostitute in public. Have you been happy? Sun Lang said with a smile. No. Sun Xiaomei had been studying Sun Lang's expression. She saw that his eyes were clear and his expression was calm. When he said these words, his face seemed to emit some kind of lofty radiance, enough to make all the lowly men in the world who did not abide by the male virtues feel ashamed and unable to show their faces. Thus, a smile immediately appeared on her face as she turned to look at her two elder brothers. Look, he never goes to this kind of place, so he's a great hero, a great general. But you two are fooling around all day, so now you are standing here, being scolded. Little sister, Sun Bofu shouted in a low voice, feeling extremely sullen. Damn, it is true that we brothers often visit prostitutes. Last night, we came to the Copper Sparrow Terrace because you wanted to see it, right? But these words could not be said here. Sun Shangxiang took advantage of the situation and immediately began to tremble. She winked at Sun Lang and said, General, teach them a few more words. In my opinion, 10 words from father can't compare to 1 word from you. Sun Bofu was anxious. He could not allow his little sister to continue talking nonsense like this. After all, although Sun Lang was amiable, perhaps that was just his cultivation and not his temperament. If he was really such an amiable person, would he have done such an explosive thing last night? Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly felt his sleeve tighten. Next to him, his second brother Sun Zhongmo pulled him back without leaving a trace. Then, he naturally raised his hand and rubbed his head, revealing a blushing smile. I don't dare. I won't go in the future. Sun Bofu was not stupid. After a pause, he suddenly understood. After his little sister's jesting, the serious and nervous atmosphere had disappeared. Sun Lang glanced at Sun Shangxiang and smiled. Your father is really not bad. Whether it is his children or not, he taught them well. The Sun family of Jiangdong has a good reputation. Sun Shangxiang stuck out her tongue. She looked very innocent and did not have the slightest embarrassment of being seen through. Sun Lang stood up. All right, you didn't sleep well last night, did you? This is not a place where girls can stay. I will send you away now. After your father enters the capital, remember to send a letter. I will visit. Sun Bofa bowed and said, The Sun family has a residence in the capital. If General is interested, you can come and stay here for a while. My family will be ready to welcome you. Sun Lang patted him on the shoulder. Let's talk about this later. Right now, there's still many things to do. You should be careful. Although the situation is in a deadlock and no one dares to have any ideas about you, There is no harm in being careful. Don't wander around these few days. Inadvertently, the interaction between the three of them had completely turned into that of a senior to a junior. Seeing that Sun Lang had already ordered them to leave, the three of them could only leave. Sun Lang sent them down the stairs and chatted with them. Sun Shangxiang gestured and giggled. A lively and beautiful girl was naturally likable. The slightly awkward atmosphere had already disappeared without a trace. They left the Luan Feng and Ming Pavilion. "General, let's stop here. You are busy, so it is not good to trouble you." Sun Lang smiled and said, "I have the same intention. There are many people outside who are watching the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. If they see me sending the three of you out, things will be very troublesome. So, we will—" The three siblings were listening respectfully to their cheap uncle when they suddenly noticed that Sun Lang's tone was stagnant. They looked up and saw that Sun Lang, who had always been expressionless, had an extremely shocked expression as he looked in a certain direction. They followed Sun Lang's gaze and saw a somewhat old Seven Treasures fragrance carriage. Two docile horses were tied to the front of the carriage and were slowly coming to a stop in front of the door. A woman stepped down from the carriage. Sun Shangxiang let out an Sun Bofu and his brother also couldn't help but gasp. The woman who stepped down from the carriage was undoubtedly a beautiful woman. She was as shy as a water lotus, reserved and quiet. She was like a fairy standing gracefully in the water. Sun Shangxiang's gasp was of shock, but the Sun brothers' gasps were of regret. This was a beautiful woman, but she was dressed in plain, white mourning clothes. She was a widow. She was in mourning. She was a peerless beauty, like a celestial concubine. In her most beautiful years, she had lost her lover and was alone in mourning. No matter who it was, they would feel regret. Sun Shangxiang subconsciously glanced at Sun Lang and discovered something in shock. Sun Lang was an exception. Sun Lang's face did not show any regret. It was a complex emotion that the little sister of the Sun family would never be able to understand at her age. Shock, sorrow, reminiscence, guilt, confusion, pain, and even fear. Before the little sister of the Sun family could come back to her senses, Sun Lang had already strode forward. He came before the woman. His tone was no longer as confident and domineering as it had been last night when he was pointing at the world and laughing arrogantly at the nobles. His tone was unprecedentedly weak and hesitant. He asked, "Who are you?" Chapter 883. It was early in the morning. The Copper Sparrow Terrace, which had been noisy in the middle of the night, was unprecedentedly quiet. The night receded and the morning sun rose. Before the cover of the night disappeared, those who wanted to come had already come. As a result, the Copper Sparrow Terrace, which was usually as crowded as a marketplace, became even more deserted. There were very few people in the large garden. The Copper Sparrow Terrace, which was usually filled with guests, was extremely quiet. A Seven Treasures fragrance carriage stopped in front of the gate. The gate was like a forest of swords and spears, guarded by elite soldiers. A weak woman in mourning clothes walked in alone. Her steps were light and slow, her expression restrained. She was like a shy flower, restraining all of her beauty and elegance. She had spent the best time of her life in her mourning clothes. She was so beautiful that it could break one's heart. Sun Lang strode in front of her. "Who are you?" he asked straightforwardly, but his tone was very weak, very confused. The woman was walking slowly with her head down. With her appearance and dress, she should not have appeared in a place like the Copper Sparrow Terrace, but she still came. There must be a reason why she had to come. No matter what, for a decent woman to come to a brothel alone, she must be under a lot of psychological pressure. Even a decent woman would not dare to come, let alone a widow. She kept her head down, almost looking at her toes. Walking like this, she did not know where she was going. She did not dare to look around. She must be very afraid, but she still came. Why did she come? Then, the woman heard a question. "Who are you?" The words were very rude, but the tone was very strange. She seemed to be frightened, raising her head like a deer. Then, she met the person in front of her eyes. Their gazes met. Sun Lang's heart was violently shaken. It had been a long time since he lost his composure. It had been a long time since he was truly shocked. At this moment, as he gazed at the woman in front of him, a strange feeling rose in his heart. He suddenly felt a sense of intimacy. A certain power in his body became fiercely active, as if it was being summoned by some mysterious power. The woman in front of him had a strange look in her eyes. A wisp of mist appeared in her glittering eyes, making her look confused and hazy. She was ethereal, graceful, and delicate. Sun Lang's heart was beating wildly. He remained calm and collected, but he felt the blood in his body boiling. Even his soul was trembling. He had almost guessed the identity of this woman, but he didn't want to believe it, and he didn't dare to believe it. All of this had happened too quickly, and he hadn't even thought about how to face it. This was a past he didn't want to look back on, and this was a knot in his heart that he couldn't let go. The woman was also shocked. She looked at Sun Lang in a daze. The man and woman looked at each other in silence. At this moment, the sound of armor clanking could be heard. A deputy general who was guarding the gate saw the situation and hurriedly strode over. He shouted in a low voice, "Don't be rude. This is Commander of War." Even though he was scolding her, his voice was not harsh. Everyone loved beauty. Even the uncouth soldiers in the army could not bear to scare such a delicate girl. The woman was shocked at first, and then she looked at Sun Lang in disbelief. This kind of reaction, this kind of shock, was enough to explain many things. However, Sun Lang avoided her gaze and actually stopped looking at the woman. Instead, he looked at the deputy general. The deputy general's face was full of respect, and his eyes were full of fanaticism. Only 2 years had passed, and the Battle of the Golden Spears and Armored Horses was still in front of him. The legends were far from fading. Reporting to Marshal, "This woman is looking for her brother." Sun Lang's expression changed slightly. "Is he your brother by blood, or from your husband's family?" "Blood brother," the woman replied in a low voice. The woman replied in a low voice with a hint of sadness in her voice. She bowed down and said, "This humble woman, Shun Yaohua, pleads the general to be magnanimous and let my brother go. Although my brother is a little naughty, he could distinguish between right and wrong. He can't possibly be related to the extraterrestrial demons." Sun Lang looked at the woman who was kneeling on the ground and took a few steps back. "Come over and help." The little sister of the Sun family hurriedly went forward and looked at Sun Lang with a strange expression. Then she helped the woman up. Sun Lang did not look at her and calmly said, "Pongji." A moment later, Imperial Tutor Pang's figure appeared at the entrance of the Luanfeng and Ming Tower. He hurriedly rushed over. He looked at Sun Lang with a questioning gaze, but Sun Lang merely waved his hand. "She's here to look for her younger brother. Go and bring him back to her." When Imperial Tutor Pang saw Shen Yaohua, he was first startled. He had already recognized this woman. He then glanced at the expressionless Sun Lang and seemed to understand something. However, Imperial Tutor Pang was a meticulous person and would not show his thoughts on his face. He only greeted the other party in a very ordinary manner and then asked a few questions in a low voice. After he finished asking, he nodded and didn't say much. He just told Sun Lang to wait for a moment before he turned around and left. After all, he could tell that Sun Lang wasn't in a calm mood, so he didn't even ask him to come in and have a seat. Instead, he hurriedly brought his brother over to settle the matter. After Pongji left, the scene became a bit awkward. Sun Lang stood in the same place like a statue. His expression was calm, and he looked straight ahead. Sun Bofu and his brother felt even more awkward. They stood at the side and did not know what to do. Sun Shanxiang's head was full of question marks. She stood beside Shen Yaohua and looked at Sun Lang and then at her. She did not know what she was thinking. Soon, Pongji brought people out. From afar, they could hear the righteous reprimand. "I will not wallow in the mire with you all. I will never give in. You sisters?" Shen Yaohua had already covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with tears. She shouted, "Erlang." It was only a 14 or 15-year-old boy. His face was stubborn and frivolous. This was the privilege of young people. It was a stage that everyone would go through. He doubted everything and would never compromise. After he saw his family, After the initial shock and emotion, he shouted, "Why did you come out?" The woman said softly, "Father is old. He can't be frightened. I can't let him come, right?" The boy was stunned at first. Then, he shouted, "Then you can't come? I can do it alone. Even if I die, I will not give in to them. I don't need you to show up in public to pick me up." As soon as he finished speaking, his face suddenly turned pale. This was because a man standing not far away raised his head and looked at him. In an instant, it was as if the world was roaring at him. It was as if there were countless invisible swords pointing at him. Perhaps in the next moment, he would be smashed into pieces. The boy fell into great fear. But in the next moment, Shen Yaohua seemed to have sensed something. She blocked her brother with her body and shouted, "Don't kill him." Sun Lang looked away and said lightly, "Why would I kill him?" He walked over and looked at the boy who had fear in his eyes. He said calmly, "You're not even fully grown. Do you want to imitate others to visit prostitutes? Don't you find it embarrassing?" Although the boy was very scared, he still said loudly, "I came to visit a brothel. Did I break the law?" Sun Lang snorted, "It didn't break the law. But the consequence of visiting a brothel is that you will be locked in a room for a whole night. No one will come to save you. No one will help you. If I want, you can die without a burial place at any time. No one will care how you die. The consequence of visiting a brothel is that your sister has to show up in public as a widow to pick you up. Because there's no one in the family, you have to be the most powerful person in the family. There are many people who need your protection. But in the end, you came here to visit a brothel. What did I come here for? Hanging out with a group of bad friends and flattering each other. Do you think this is socializing? Is this making friends? Is this expanding your network? You saw it. Your network is useless. You are worthless to them, and they are worthless to you. What did you get from visiting a brothel?" The boy's face was full of humiliation and unwillingness. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's none of your business." Shen Yaohua was so scared that she covered his mouth. "Adi, it's really none of my business. I said too much." Sun Lang reached out like lightning and held the boy in his hand. His eyes flashed, and his divine sense swept across the boy. He had already checked the boy's whole body. After confirming that there was no problem, he threw the boy to Shen Yaohua, whose face had changed color. "You can go." The other party seemed to be a reserved and shy widow. She didn't dare to say more. After bowing to Sun Lang and thanking him, she bowed to Sun Shangxiang and Pangji respectively. Then she took her unwilling brother and left. But in the end, she looked at Sun Lang with a very complicated look. There were many words in her eyes, but she didn't say them. Sun Lang looked at her back and seemed to be talking to himself. "I'm sorry." His voice was very soft and restrained by his genuine chi. No one else heard it, but the woman's body shook. She did hear it, but this apology, what was it for? Sun Lang watched the brother and sister walk into the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage. The driver, who looked uneasy, immediately waved his whip and whispered to the horse to turn and leave. The slightly old Seven Treasures fragrance carriage's windows were closed. He didn't know what the people inside looked like at this time and what they were thinking. He stood where he was, silent, and didn't say a word. The others could only stand with him, and no one dared to speak. After a while, Sun Shangxiang said carefully, General? She's already gone?" Sun Lang came back to his senses and slowly let out a sigh of relief. "I miscalculated," he said in his heart. He should have been more indifferent, more tough, and even showed disdain and killing intent. But there was no difference. It was the same. It was just like fate. Just like after he came back, he couldn't get around Bai Yue. He couldn't get around Rongwu Manor. He couldn't get around this woman. He couldn't get around what that person left behind. This was a knot in his heart, a fate he had to face. Sun Lang raised his head and looked at the sky, his eyes somewhat sorrowful. He suddenly felt somewhat lonely and sorrowful. In Luo, Big Sister Bao, Young Lady Zhao, Little Sister Lin, Chao, Patao, Annie Lu, he missed them very much. Chapter 884. A carriage had already been prepared outside, and the soldiers waiting outside invited the Sun siblings in. With the crisp sound of a whip, the carriage began to slowly move forward. Sun Shangxiang opened the window. The perimeter of the Copper Sparrow Terrace was still heavily guarded. There was a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. The elite soldiers stood upright, their eyes sharp and steady, cautiously and attentively paying attention to all the movements in the surroundings. What happened last night was like a dream. She stretched her neck and looked through the tall main entrance of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The person who had been standing there had already disappeared. The young girl could not help but feel a sense of loss. Her 2 brothers did not have such leisure time. After getting into the carriage, they both let out a sigh. They were born in the eldest branch and were already old. They already understood their status and responsibilities. Thus, even with Sun Bofu's pride and arrogance, he did not dare to show the slightest disrespect in front of Shinsei General. Not to mention Sun Zhoumo. What happened last night had scared them to death. Even now, when they thought about it, they still had lingering fears. They were both in their 20s, but the gap between them was like the abyss. It was really discouraging. Sun Bofu slowly said, after returning home, close the door and refuse to see any guests. Before father arrives at the capital, don't go out again. Everything will wait for father to arrive. The second brother nodded and said, Big brother is right. This is how it should be. He glanced at his sister and found that she was still in a daze in front of the window. He reached out and closed the curtains. Little sister, there are many people on the street. Don't let them see your face to avoid more trouble. Sun Zhoumo said this and could not help but worry. He was really scared last night. He was not scared by the crackdown on prostitution, but by Sun Lang's courage. On the first night Shinsei General returned to the capital, he had offended nearly a third of the major figures in the court. It was said that he even took the time to cause a ruckus in front of the imperial city in Tensei province. This person did not know the difference between life and death. It was to the point that it made one's hair stand on end. However, from the way he commanded the troops in the Copper Sparrow Terrace and his meticulous planning, the general was not a madman who had lost his mind. Instead, he was a wise man with a deep mind. There must be a deeper meaning behind the commotion last night. Even so, Sun Zhoumo could not help but feel worried. Perhaps the general was playing so big because he had a card up his sleeve. However, his father was determined to be tied to him. Could the Sun family of Jiangdong really withstand the aftermath of the battle between Sun Lang and the emperor? But the matter has almost been settled. Today, the general's attitude was very amiable, and he looked at us favorably. It was also because of this matter. At this point, it is impossible to go back on our words. Father, this time, you might have made a mistake. Just as the second son of the Sun family was worrying, Sun Shangxiang suddenly said, It's so strange. The 2 brothers looked at her. Sun Xiaomei leaned against the side of the carriage and supported her chin with her right hand. She asked curiously, Who is that woman? Why did uncle make such an expression? The 2 elder brothers' expressions became very strange. You've already started to call him uncle, you snobbish guy. The little sister noticed the 2 elder brothers' gazes, and her face turned red. Then she glared at them and said, What? Isn't this what father wants? Or are you 2 still not convinced? Last night, you were so scared that you didn't dare to say a word. Today, you were as obedient as a baby in front of him. Now you're making trouble? She snorted twice. You're a real man, but you're not as straightforward as a little girl like me. The general's martial arts is high. His official position is high. His achievements are splendid, and his character is good. He must be a good man who keeps his chastity like jade and is faithful to one woman until death. He doesn't even go to the brothel. Unlike you 2, what's wrong with having such a little uncle? With such a big backer, if we hold on to him in the future, if there is someone who doesn't have eyes and comes to our house to propose marriage, they only need to cry and complain in front of uncle. With just a glare from him, everyone will be scared witless. Sun Zhoumo coughed dryly. Keeping one's chastity like jade is not used like that. Also, little sister, you should talk less. Don't talk about other people's private life behind their backs. But I'm really curious. Sun Shangxiang pouted and muttered. Who is that woman? Uncle actually sees her in a new light. But looking at his previous behavior, It seems that the two of them have met for the first time, but they do seem to be very familiar with each other. Could it be? Could it be? The fire of gossip ignited in the girl's eyes. She lowered her voice and said mysteriously, "Love at first sight?" The so-called feelings of a young girl, love to fantasize, like to fill in the gaps in her imagination, and she was good at forming a couple. Some girls at this stage of their life made a mistake and walked into an unspeakable, mysterious realm. From then on, they fell into the abyss of corruption. Even if they saw two strangers on the roadside, they would imagine an earth-shattering love story without their permission. Of course, Sun Shangxiang did not have such a strange hobby. She was just an ordinary young girl who had imagined a beautiful love story in her head. It was just an accidental encounter, but it seemed to be a fated encounter. On this day, he met her, and she met him. The moment their eyes met, ripples appeared in their calm hearts. The two of them imprinted each other's shadow in their eyes, and their hearts beat rapidly. With just one glance, they were incomparably sure that this was the most suitable person in this life. Ah, what a beautiful encounter, Sun Shangxiang thought. However, the world's view and public opinion had become an uncrossable gap between the two of them. She was a widowed woman who had lost her lover in the best years of her life. She had to keep her chastity for her late husband, her family, her husband's family, and the education she had received all required her to be faithful to her husband until her death. That's why those people are so annoying. That sister is obviously so young and beautiful. Her beautiful years have just begun. Why can't she do what she likes? In the end, she didn't meet the right person in the best years of her life. Their encounter this time was too late. She knew it, and so did he. Therefore, the only communication they had was that, "Who are you?" which was close to losing his composure. After that, he returned to the indifference of being passionate and polite. After a rather long and rather short gaze, they returned to their original identities. She was a widow who kept her chastity, and he was a pillar of the court. This encounter was the only interaction they had. Their lives ran in opposite directions. Only in the dead of night would they think of each other at the same time. They would think of the regret of not meeting sooner. They would think of the person they had met before, the person who had stopped in their hearts. Ah, how beautiful, how touching, but it's a bit sad, Sun Shangxiang thought. She felt that the ending of this story wasn't too good. Yes, her uncle was the Shansei general, a famous general of his generation with outstanding military achievements. Not to mention her two brothers. Even her father couldn't compare to him. He was so awe-inspiring last night, so domineering. How could he go against his own heart for the so-called prejudice and discussion of the secular world? So this is how the story should develop. The general of the Shansei kept this encounter in his heart. In the end, that figure remained in his heart. He wanted to forget, but he couldn't. Fate continued to move forward. A general of the court and a widow, two people who had nothing to do with each other, once again intersected. Their fates were still intertwined. After experiencing many things, the general of the Shansei finally understood his own feelings. He wanted to marry this woman. Even if she was a widow, it didn't matter. Even if everyone opposed it, it didn't matter. He was a general with illustrious military achievements, an invincible general. For the person he loved, he didn't hesitate to become the enemy of the world. Sun Shangxiang was moved to tears by this kind of development. Yes, this was a better story. It was much more exciting than the stories of scholars and beauties, young heroes, and so on. Those damned girls who usually cried when they heard a few stories about meeting under the moon and flying as butterflies. If they heard this story, wouldn't they scream until they went crazy? A thought flashed through Miss Sun's mind. Other people can write those cringe-worthy stories. Why can't I write a better one? Sun family of Jiangdong, Miss Sun Shangxiang, 15 years old. The innocent and unrestrained feelings of a young girl were taking large strides in an extremely dangerous direction. Little sister, what are you thinking about? The helpless question interrupted Marshal Badeo's storyline. Miss Sun suddenly came back to her senses. Sun Bofu said helplessly. I said, That lady's husband might be a comrade of the general of the Shinsei. Sun Shangxiang was shocked. Ah, there's another obstacle? Obstacle? What obstacle? Miss Sun laughed dryly and shrunk her neck. No, nothing. But the general of the Shin's attitude is indeed a bit strange. Okay, let's stop here. This is not something we can delve into. Sun Bofu took out the dignity of an elder brother and said, "This matter can be mentioned to father in private." As for that lady, he hesitated for a moment and said, "She is called Xin Yaohua. If she is the widow of a famous general of Tianyuan, with her beauty and the fact that her brother can enter the Copper Sparrow Terrace, her family should not be unknown in the capital. We can find someone to ask about it another day." Sun Shangxiang nodded repeatedly. Yes, we have to ask. Sun Bofu raised his eyebrows. His little sister had been very strange from the beginning. He did not know what she was thinking. Just as he was about to reprimand her, his expression suddenly changed. At this time, the carriage had already left the Copper Sparrow Terrace Street and was heading towards their residence in the capital. At this time, a noisy noise came into the carriage. The voice was very familiar. It was the shout of a young and impetuous boy. The voice contained the arrogance and anger of a newborn calf that was not afraid of Tiger. "If you don't move away, don't blame me for being impolite." The Sun brother and sister remembered this voice. It was probably because his voice was going through puberty that the young man's voice sounded a little rough. This melon child was unyielding in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion and even loudly contradicted the Divine Strategies General, which left a deep impression on the three of them. In other words, the Sun brothers looked at each other, opened the door of the carriage, and jumped down. Chapter 885. Copper Sparrow Terrace, Luan Feng Ming Tower, 7th floor. The best private room had been turned into the Shinsei General's personal office. Anyway, this kind of top-notch VIP room was not inferior to a luxurious room. There was a bedroom, a study, a living room, a bathroom, and other facilities. It could be said that it was quite corrupt. After all, General had transmigrated for 8 years. On the surface, he had been completely corroded by the sugar-coated bullets of feudalism. He was an upright and magnanimous person. He never hid his low-class interests. In life, why should he make things difficult for himself? Of course, he would use whatever was good. At this moment, he was sitting in the study. His eyes were calm, and his face was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. Pongji quietly poked his head out and said softly, "Marshal." Sun Lang was shocked. "Are you crazy?" Seeing this, Imperial Tutor Pang let out a sigh of relief. Ah, this reaction is considered normal. Sun Lang completely recovered. He stared and said, "What's wrong?" Pongji walked in and closed the door. He sighed, "What's going on?" Sun Lang was even more confused. "What's going on?" "Don't pretend. It's too obvious." Imperial Tutor Pang casually pulled a chair and sat down. He faced Sun Lang from a distance. "From last night until now, you have been commanding calmly. Everything is under your control. It's just like when you won every battle. When the brothers saw your appearance, all the worries in their hearts disappeared without a trace. Because at that time, you were just like in the past. That kind of temperament, that kind of expression, that kind of demeanor, we are all too familiar with it." His eyes flashed with reminiscence. "You were like this in the past. There was no battle that you could not win. There was no sky demon that you could not defeat. So much so that we formed, just like you said, conditioned reflex. As long as we see you, as long as we see your confident appearance, we will not have the slightest bit of fear. Because we know that we can win. As long as we do what you tell us to do, we can win." But just now, your expression changed for the first time. Perhaps others could not see it, but we could see it. It was too obvious. That feeling, do you understand? Hearing this, Sun Lang became silent. Pongji said slowly, "Your expression didn't change when you challenged the Copper Sparrow Terrace and offended almost a third of the big shots in the Imperial Court. When you pushed Prince Zhongshuan against the sky-bearing gate and trampled on the Emperor's face, your expression still didn't change. When you caused havoc in Tensei Province and beat the Tensei generals into a pulp, your expression still didn't change. However, Earlier, right before my eyes, you lost your composure. You appeared to be very flustered and even at a loss. To be honest, I've never seen you like this before. I even thought that you would never show such an expression. Panji leaned forward and said solemnly, "What's going on? Can you tell me? There's something wrong with your current situation, so I need to warn you. Right now, the situation is tense. Although you've gained the upper hand by charging into the imperial capital with a thunderous momentum, you're still walking on a tightrope. Everyone's eyes are focused on you. Any small mistake will become a fatal weakness." His tone became heavier. "Don't forget that the lives of many people are in your hands." Sun Lang remained silent. After a while, he said slowly, "Don't worry." This answer was reserved and even perfunctory. Panji raised his eyebrows. "I'm afraid I can't." Sun Lang said lightly, "I'm also human. I have a heart, my blood is hot, and I have feelings. It's normal for me to lose control for a moment. But I'm also a soldier. When I really need to make a decision, I won't hesitate. Don't you even trust me on this point?" Imperial Tutor Pang sighed. "It's not that I don't trust you, but you clearly care about that woman. Why didn't you take the initiative to ask me about her situation?" Sun Lang replied, "There's no need. The less I know, the safer she'll be." "So it's true," Panji said in a low voice. His tone was somewhat complicated. "We always thought that the one who saved you in the Great Barren Mountain was Old Bai's grandfather. We didn't expect that we were all wrong. The one who saved you was not the one who was most likely to help, but the one who was least likely to help. This is really," Sun Lang said calmly, "I owe him." Panji raised his eyebrows and said seriously, "The one you owe is only him." Sun Lang lowered his gaze and looked at the table. He said slowly, "Yes, it better be so." Panji leaned back on the chair and looked up at the beam. He murmured, "I'll tell you the truth. When I saw that expression on your face, I was first shocked, then a killing intent emerged. Fortunately, the person you called was me. If Android or anyone else saw this scene, Shen Yaowa would be a dead person now." Sun Lang glanced at Panji. "Don't look at me like that," Imperial Tutor Pang said softly. "If I kill that woman, I naturally have the resolve to pay with my life. Android is the same. Many people will be the same." Sun Lang said calmly, "In other words, anyone who distracts me will have to die. Your family, your lover, those you care about, and those who care about you, of course, are not included. We will risk our lives to protect them, just like you protect us." Imperial Tutor Pang looked fearlessly at Sun Lang. "But this woman is different." "How is she different?" "You know best." Then, the young Imperial Censor Wu avoided Sun Lang's gaze and looked elsewhere. He was slightly hesitant, but in the end he said, "After all, the matter in the Great Barren Mountain is not so simple, right?" Sun Lang looked at him. His gaze was still calm. He suddenly laughed, shook his head, and sighed. "Yes, but it is not so complicated." Outside the room, light and hurried footsteps could be heard going up the stairs. To the west of the Copper Sparrow Terrace Avenue, at the intersection of the markets beside the wide street, Shen Yaohua's slightly old Seven Treasures fragrance carriage was stopped by the road. It had been forcefully stopped. Just now, when they heard Shen Yaohua's brothers shout, they could hear that the siblings had encountered trouble. It was the nature of a warrior to draw his sword in anger when he saw injustice on the road. Furthermore, thinking of the general's strange attitude before, the two brothers were even more duty-bound. After the two of them jumped off the carriage, they saw the scene in the distance. In front of the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage, there was a luxurious and jeweled carriage. Around it were dozens of people in twos and threes. They were all dressed as servants in green clothes and small hats, but they were all powerful and had bright eyes. An elegant man in red clothes stood in front of the carriage. He looked cultured and elegant, and his expression was amiable and approachable. In front of the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage, the young man from the Shun family, who had squatted in the brothel for a night, was glaring angrily. Sun Jomo whispered, "He is not easy to deal with. Our family's name is not well known in the capital. This place is not far from the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Little sister, quickly go back and invite the general." "Brother, and I will go and persuade him." Sun Shangxiang did not get off the carriage, but she knew the severity of the matter. She immediately nodded and agreed. She tiptoed down the carriage. Her movements were light and graceful. With the cover of the carriage and the distance between them, she wouldn't have attracted any attention. But at this moment, the red-robed man turned his head and looked at her with a faint smile. "Friend over there, I wonder which house's signboard is this?" Sun Shangxiang was shocked and ran away. The three siblings were connected by blood, and their hearts were connected. The Sun brothers stepped forward at the same time, but their palms were already sweating. This person's martial arts were so high. Sun Bofu was good at martial arts, and Sun Zhongmo was good at literature. The former could fight, and the latter was smart. In the face of this disadvantage, the second brother did not think and immediately took out his cheap uncle's banner, Sun Bofu and Sun Zhongmo of the Sun family of Jiangdong. "We are under the order of the General Shansei to send this madam off. I wonder why you are blocking the carriage?" As soon as these words came out, it was effective. The atmosphere suddenly froze. The man in red clothes was slightly stunned, and then he smiled. "So it's you." There was a trace of ridicule in his smile. The young man from the Shun family, who was blocking in front of the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage to protect his sister, jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He turned his head and shouted at the Sun brothers, who asked him to meddle in other people's business. Sun Bofu was startled at first, and then anger rose in his heart. Where did this little brat come from? He really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He was trying to be brave, and he did not know what was good for him. He must find a chance to teach him a lesson. Before he finished this thought, he heard the man in red clothes say, "Madam has always rejected my good intentions. I did not expect there to be such a story. No wonder when I suggested to help Madam bail out your brother, Madam flatly refused. She went to the meeting alone, broke into the Copper Sparrow Pavilion alone, and successfully rescued your brother. She could be said to be a heroine among women. If your husband is watching from the heavens, he must be gratified." His words were very polite, but it sounded awkward. The young man from the Shun family was even angrier. He shouted, "The one with the surname Qi. Don't go too far." The man in red clothes said in surprise, "Where did this come from?" The young man from the Shin family was so angry that he shouted. Just as he was about to curse, a gentle voice came from the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage. "Whatever Sir says, it is what it is. This little girl has a clear conscience." The Sun brothers were dumbfounded when they heard this. The two of them were not stupid. They vaguely realized that something was wrong, so they kept silent. Anyway, their little sister had gone to find the general. As long as they invited him here, everything would not be a problem. "Madam, you seem to have misunderstood me. I admire and respect people like Madam. After all, there are many beauties in the world, but many of them are just a bag of skin. Only a beauty like Madam, who is pure and is both the inside and the outside, is a true heavenly beauty." The man in red clothes smiled. His eyebrows were full of sincerity, as if every word he said came from his heart. "Especially today, Madam endured humiliation and forced a smile in front of that person for your younger brother. She acted as if nothing had happened. You are the best husband in the world." When Sun Bofu and Sun Zhongmo heard this, they were shocked. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's hearts. What did that person just say? Endured humiliation? Forced a smile? In the Copper Sparrow Terrace, Sun Shangxiang, who had been running all the way, saw Sun Lang and shouted, "Uncle, that Sister Shun is in trouble." Someone stopped her. "It seems like he has bad intentions. Hurry up and save her." The girl was half worried and half expectant. Wow, this was simply fate. This was an opportunity given by God. She was already immersed in the plot of the tyrannical general. Wasn't this a ready-made plot? Next, it was a good opportunity to be a hero and save the damsel in distress. Pongji, who was sitting to the side, immediately looked at Sun Lang with a burning gaze. Facing the meaningful gazes of the two, Sun Lang's expression was calm. He tapped the table, and no one could tell what he was thinking. After a while, he said indifferently, "Humph, a clumsy test." He turned to look at Pangji. Take some men and bring the troublemaker here. He's blocking an anti-sky devil who has just completed an investigation and regained his innocence. I'm afraid he's up to no good. Bring him here for our investigation." Panji nodded and said, "I understand. I'll do it right away." He looked at Sun Lang and said without rhyme or reason, "Stop here." Sun Lang said indifferently, "I hope so." The two's answer confused Sun Shangxiang, but the girl still grasped the main point of the question. She shouted with disappointment, Uncle, you're not going to go personally?" Before Sun Lang could answer, Pang Ji said coldly, "The general has to attend to a myriad of affairs every day. What kind of status does he have? Why would he run around for a widow? It would be a joke for no reason. He has to take care of everything himself. Why would he need us?" Of course, this was very reasonable. The girl couldn't help but be speechless. She couldn't say the truth, but she still hoped that the general would go personally. But that person's martial arts are very high. He also looks very fierce. He must be a big bad guy. Panji shook his head and left. High martial arts, how high could it be? Chapter 886. Enduring humiliation and forcing a smile. These two words were too strange. The Sun brothers couldn't help but let their imagination run wild. When they thought of Sun Lang's strange behavior, the hostile attitude of the boy from the Shun family, and Shun Yaohua's strange behavior, they suddenly realized that they seemed to have misunderstood something. The victory of Tian Yuan 2 years ago was a topic that would be talked about by the people of Hooded territory for at least 10 years. Romance novels and stories emerged one after another, and all kinds of heroic figures popped up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. Famous battles, legendary battles, dazzling generals. The people who revered heroes were tirelessly digging up the highlights of the Great War of Tian Yuan. This was the people's memory of the heroes. But even though it was the final battle of Tian Yuan, the Great Barren Mountain was surrounded by lingering mysteries. The truth was covered up, and the truth was not known by anyone. Those who knew kept quiet about it, and those who didn't were reluctant to let it go. But only a few people knew the real truth, and everything was hidden very well. But there was no such thing as a flawless thing in the world. As long as something existed, there would be traces. The Sun brothers were the proud descendants of the Sun family of Jiangdong, so they knew a little more than ordinary people. They didn't believe a single word Sun Lang said yesterday because they knew that before the commander of war came to the capital, he had killed a lot of people in Jinling. He had pressed 2 lords to the ground and rubbed them against the ground. The entire Jinling city was shrouded in his thunderous anger. Later, he even did something like making the imperial envoy kneel to read the imperial edict. Are you really a loyal and patriotic hero who wholeheartedly hunted down the remnants of the sky demon? How could you do such a thing? Since the version of the hero given by the commander of war was not true, it was not difficult to deduce the truth from his extremely hostile attitude toward the Tensei province and the imperial city. The Battle of the Great Barren Mountain was soaked in blood. No one could say how many of the 300,000 elites died in the hands of the sky demon, but it was very clear that a considerable number of them died in the hands of their own people. The Sun brothers forcibly suppressed their hearts that were beating faster and faster. They felt quite regretful in their hearts. They had already guessed something. Shin Yaohua's late husband was most likely killed by the general. That was why General Shangwan had said sorry out of the blue, right? Therefore, Shin Yaohua would be very surprised after knowing the identity of the general, right? That was why the man with the surname Qi said something about enduring humiliation and forcing a smile. It was indeed so. He clearly knew that the person in front of him had killed his husband, but for the sake of his younger brother, he could not show the slightest bit of hatred. For a moment, the Sun brothers were filled with regret. Regardless of the twists and turns in the plot, regardless of what the general was thinking, they didn't know if it was right or wrong for them to jump out and stand up for him. When the Shun family kid heard the man, surnamed Qi's words, he flew into a rage. Qi, practice, flame. The man with the surname Qi still had the appearance of a cultured, elegant, and handsome man. His tone was extremely innocent. Young Master Shun, is what I said, not the truth. Your sister endured a great humiliation and went to a brothel like the Copper Sparrow Terrace alone to bring young Master Shin back. As a man, don't you feel ashamed? Instead of venting your anger on that person, you take it out on me. Could it be that you're afraid? This is pardonable. After all, it was that person. This was equivalent to a slap in the face back then, and it was a very hard slap. Even a mature and calm adult might not be able to endure it, let alone a hot-blooded child. The Shin family kids said angrily, "Bullshit. That person caused my sister to—" At this moment, a shout came out from the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage. Erlang. Although her tone was still melancholic and weak, it contained a strange power. Everyone who heard it felt their hearts tremble, not to mention the Chun family's kid. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were directly cut off by this shout. Sun Bofu's expression changed slightly. This Xinyaohua also had a special technique. He had underestimated her. Qi Lianyan's expression was normal, but a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. He laughed softly and said, "Madam is indeed talented and beautiful. This makes me admire you more and more." Xinyaohua, who had just shown off her skills, was still sitting in the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage and refused to show her face. She said softly, "Young master, please conduct yourself with dignity. This humble girl is already a married woman. This humble one is also very sorry about your husband's matter. I can empathize with madam's feelings. After all, you and I are in the same boat." Qi Lianyan replied in a sincere tone, "It is precisely because of this that I am deeply in love with madam's strength and temperament. Currently, the imperial court's laws encourage widows to get married. Although madam has been married before, you are still eligible for marriage. I am also unmarried. What's wrong with expressing my affection for madam?" He bowed solemnly and said, "This humble one is also willing to lend a hand to madam's matter." The Sun brothers could not help but narrow their eyes when they heard this. Qi Lianyan, they could empathize with madam's feelings. This name, if they guessed correctly, he should be the late Fire Sword Saint Qi Lianyan's younger brother. Lend a hand. What a nice lend a hand. After what happened last night, although they did not say it out loud, they had a deep impression of Sun Lang in their hearts. Even their resistance to recognizing him as their uncle had weakened a lot. Therefore, they were somewhat dissatisfied with this lend-a-hand excuse. Sun Bofu thought for a moment and said indifferently, "Young Master Qi's words are really incomprehensible." Qi Lianyan glanced at them and smiled slightly. "This humble one is speaking with Madame Shan. Why should I let the two of you understand? Do you want to interfere in the private affairs of two families?" Without waiting for Sun Bofu to reply, Qi Lianyan continued, "Therefore, even if the two young masters don't understand, I have no obligation to answer. If you really don't understand, why don't you go back and ask your uncles? Perhaps he will be able to resolve your doubts?" With sharp tongue, Sun Zhongmo inwardly cursed. These words were not only for the Sun brothers to hear, but also for the Shun siblings. After all, the siblings had mixed feelings about General Shansei for unspeakable reasons. When they heard Qi Lianyan's provocation, they were even more conflicted about the sudden appearance of the Sun brothers. After all, they had already revealed their identities. At this moment, the sound of hooves could be faintly heard from behind them. Hearing this, the Sun brothers were first delighted, then worried. Now that things had come to this, they did not know if it was right or wrong for them to stand up. They did not want to mess things up again. Qi Lianyan, on the other hand, smiled slightly. That person really cares about madam." The Shun brat shouted, "Nonsense! We have nothing to do with him. Sister, let's go." Qi Lianyan chuckled. "Young Master Shun, are you in such a hurry to leave because you have a guilty conscience?" While the two of them were mingling with each other, the cavalry had already arrived. When the Sun brothers turned around to look, they were both startled. The one who came was not Sun Lang, but a refined scholar with a jade-like face. They were quite amused by this result. Why didn't he come himself? Sharp golden spears, galloping horses, and a murderous aura. The commoners, who were watching the commotion from afar, were frightened and involuntarily retreated. Qi Lianyan, on the other hand, was still standing in place, fanning himself. He sneered. "Ah, what great power, what great murderous aura." His servants and bodyguards had already gathered without leaving a trace, quietly surrounding their master. This was their duty and mission. Pongji rode his horse over, his expression indifferent as he swept his gaze over the crowd. "What's going on?" Sun Jongmo was afraid that his elder brother would not be able to speak clearly, so he immediately cupped his hands and cleverly chose to testify in favor of his side. Reporting to Lord Pongji, "This young Master Qi has openly intercepted the carriage of an innocent woman in broad daylight, speaking rudely and harassing endlessly. We saw injustice on the road, so we came to stop him." Pongji nodded slightly. This second son of the Sun family had some brains. He looked at the Shin siblings and asked, "Is that so?" Before the Shin brat could answer, Qi Lianyan smiled. "I'm old friends with the Shun family. We met on the road, so I stopped the carriage to pay my respects. Pillars of the imperial court, pillars of the imperial court, King Lu Li, do you even want to interfere in such a trivial matter?" The Sun brothers frowned as soon as they heard this. If the Shun siblings had any conflicts in their hearts, they would definitely make Pang Ji suffer in silence. After all, there was a blood feud between the two of them. However, who was Imperial Tutor Pang? He was a military censor, and he was good at fighting and scolding. How about he give the other party a chance to show off? He frowned and waved his hand. "Humph, I really don't want to bother with such a trivial matter. Shin brat, since you've been cleared of suspicion, you should go home immediately. As for you," he looked at Qi Lianyan, his tone emotionless. "The Shin family has just been cleared of suspicion and can return home, but you stopped us halfway and asked all sorts of questions. Are you trying to spy on the Copper Sparrow Terrace? This is a top secret of the Imperial Court. Your suspicious behavior has attracted our attention, so come with me." Qi Lianyan was stunned, as if he did not expect such a thing. Then he looked up and laughed. Pongji said indifferently, "We're very busy. If you want to laugh, laugh at the Copper Sparrow Terrace." What a joke. Qi Lianyan wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. "May I ask, sir, what crime have I committed that you want to take me away? What right do you have to make me go with you?" Imperial Tutor Pang said in a straight face, "It's a top secret of the Imperial Court. No comment. If you have any doubts or dissatisfaction, the Imperial Court, the Imperial Censorate, or even the Imperial Court. After that, you can use any method you like to raise your doubts. Now, I order you to cooperate with us." Qi Lianyan smiled. "What if I don't go with you?" Pongji said coldly, "If you don't go, you'll die." "Ha, ha, ha." Qi Lianyan looked up and laughed. "If you don't go, you'll die." His gaze sharpened. In the next moment, a blazing aura spread out with a bang. Amidst the rolling heat waves, a dazzling red light bloomed. The sharp sword light was like flowing lava. The elegant young master had turned into a dazzling warrior in an instant. Say that again. Chapter 887. With the essence of Mars, with the balance of the vermilion bird. This was the spirit of fire. The fierce sword light rose, and the scorching hot waves roared and rolled. In an instant, the slightly cold streets of the imperial capital became extremely hot, dispelling the cold as if it was midsummer. The sacred light of the imperial army rose, as if fire had descended upon the earth. The Sun brothers' expressions changed. They already knew that Qi Lianyan's martial arts were very high, but what they saw was still far beyond their expectations. It turned out that this person had already gained the approval of the sacred sword of fire and inherited his brother's legacy. How amazing and how glorious it was to have two sword saints. The people on the street who were watching the show also exclaimed. The people in the distance were even more shocked when they saw the rising radiance of the imperial army. Then, the exclamations turned into cheers that spread farther and farther. Yes, cheers. The Great War of Tianyuan was an era of heroes. Famous generals emerged in large numbers, and experts were as common as clouds. In this era of war, there was no greater glory than joining the army. Famous generals were revered, and those with outstanding military achievements were naturally recorded in the annals of history. However, the peerless experts with outstanding martial arts were also revered. Of all the martial artists in the world, the most representative was none other than the 7 luminary sword saint. The 7 luminaries sword saints who wielded sacred swords and protected humanity had almost become a symbol of the Hutu Empire. They were the most powerful martial artists and the most powerful imperial weapons. They were the protectors of the empire. The Great War of Mount Dahuang ended the chaotic era of Tianyuan, but it also left a deep regret for the empire. 300,000 elites were lost, and the 7 luminaries sword saints who once illuminated the empire were also scattered. Some died, and some were injured. The sacred sword of fire was one of the heroes who died. When the news spread out, many people regretted it. After the Great War, the sacred sword of fire had been enshrined in the Mars Sword Palace. It had been silent for 2 whole years, and no one knew anything about its situation. No one knew if the imperial court had found a new sword saint. No one knew how many warriors had trained hard and joined the army. They all dreamed of being able to wield this legendary sacred sword. Now, the light of the sacred sword of fire shone in the sky of the imperial capital again. This was the symbol of a nation's strength, and it was difficult for non-empire citizens to understand this feeling. This burning sword light meant that the empire had gained another invincible protector. When Qi Lianyan heard the exclamations and cheers coming from all around, he was incomparably delighted. Yes, the fire-radiant sword saint was revered by countless people, He was the protector of the world and had an honorable status. This was what he wanted. This was just the beginning. This was what they meant by, after suffering comes happiness. Today was the historic moment of his first appearance. His life had entered a new chapter. He raised his blazing holy sword and pointed it at Pangji and the others. The might of fire was unleashed, and an invisible heat wave swept across, causing the war horses of the army to retreat. The newly promoted fire sword saint shouted, "Do you recognize this sacred sword? Let me ask you one more time. What position do you hold? What authority do you have to order a 7 luminaries sword saint around and even say that he will die if he doesn't go? My dynasty was founded on martial arts and ruled by law. What right do you have to arrest the innocent and treat human lives like grass? Who is indulging you? What right do you have to do this?" His voice was very loud and clear. He circulated his internal energy and sent it far away. Many people in the nearby market could hear him clearly. Coupled with the blazing sword Qi shining in the sky, it was impossible not to be conspicuous. Qi Lianyan's sword Qi was blazing. His expression was dignified, and his words were like knives. He was full of righteousness, as if he was a righteous person who was visiting incognito and angrily rebuking evil tyrants. His whole body was emitting a positive energy aura. He said in a stern voice, "There's more. The sacred sword of fire is here. The fire sword saint is here. What right do you have to sit on your horses in front of the 7 luminary sword saint? Get off your horses." The wind was hot, but Pangji's heart was cold. This was not a coincidence. This was a well-designed trap, a huge conspiracy. Last night, the marshal challenged the Copper Sparrow Terrace, arrived at the Gate of Heaven, and stirred up trouble in Tensei Province. In one night, he stirred up a storm in the imperial capital. He predicted the enemy's moves and attacked the enemy's weakest point. His momentum was like a storm, completely suppressing the emperor and the empress. It could be said that he had the upper hand. However, that was the emperor after all, Empress Tensei. How could he be captured without a fight? That was why today's incident happened. The Fire Sword Saint's sudden appearance was for no other reason than to drag the marshal into a normal rhythm. After all, his command last night was calm, and he came up with one brilliant plan after another. In fact, he was outside the political circle of the imperial capital. His actions were unpredictable, and his stratagems were unconstrained. That was why the emperor's side was caught off guard and almost unable to resist. Now, they had to play to their advantage. Qi Lianyan suddenly raised the sacred sword of fire and pressed down with the momentum of the 7 luminary sword saint. This person had mastered the sacred sword of fire for no more than 2 years. If the marshal attacked, it would not be difficult to defeat him. However, if he attacked, it would turn into a fight between two sword saints in the imperial capital. It would definitely cause a lot of discussion and turmoil. This would make the uninformed commoners inexplicably shocked. If the emperor's side took the opportunity to manipulate the public opinion, the situation would become extremely passive. After all, the marshal had already decided last night to tell the world the real reason why he had disappeared for 2 years and create an image of a painstaking hero. In this way, things would become very difficult. Moreover, the Sun Sword Saint and the Moon Sword Saint had been summoned to the imperial capital half a month ago. There were originally countless experts in the imperial capital. If the incident turned into a fight between two sword saints, the imperial court would have a reason and righteousness to publicly mediate. At that time, the martial status would fall from being outside the imperial capital to fighting with the fire sword saint on the street. He would lose his detached position. All kinds of causes and effects flashed through Panji's mind. He could even see Qi Lianyan's well-hidden pride and joy. Things had happened so suddenly that even with his intelligence, he could not think of any way to break out of this situation. If the marshal did not appear, his prestige and the legitimacy of his actions would be damaged. If he appeared, he would be dragged into the normal rhythm of the imperial capital by the fire sword saint, and the plan would fall into a passive state. What should I do? Caught in a dilemma, there was nothing he could do. At this moment, the blazing wave suddenly receded. A calm voice rang out, "Who are you?" Hearing this voice, the Sun brothers breathed a sigh of relief. Panji closed his eyes and sighed softly. Facing the might of the sacred sword of fire head-on, Zhu Jun, who was still trying his best to maintain his shock, immediately rolled off his saddle and half-knelt on the ground, loudly saying, "Greetings, Commander of War." Panji looked at Sun Lang with a complicated expression and also got off his horse and knelt. The Sun brothers' reaction was slightly slower, but they also half-knelt on the ground. The rumbling of iron hooves came from behind. More Tianyuan generals and their elite troops rode over. Last night's incident at the Copper Sparrow Terrace had shocked the imperial capital, but it had nothing to do with the commoners. Now that they suddenly saw so many elite troops, they could not help but be dumbfounded. What they saw today was enough for them to brag about for 3 months. The commoners were shocked and could not help but look at the young man who had appeared at the side of the street. He was wearing a strange white robe and had short hair. He looked like an ordinary young man, but at this moment, he seemed to be the center of the world. The Fire Sword Saint was looking at him. The young master was also looking at him, and those elite soldiers were kneeling before him. Who was he? Sun Lang looked at Qi Lianyan and the sacred sword in his hand, as if he was looking at a box. He asked, "Who are you?" Qi Lianyan looked at the person in front of him and could not help but be shocked. Hearing about a legend and seeing it in person were two completely different concepts. The expression in his eyes changed. There was hatred, fear, disdain, and also fear. But in the end, the promise of the Supreme Being and the sacred sword in his hand gave him confidence. He felt the power of fire flowing in his body and recalled the analysis that the teacher had given him. Do not panic, the other party will not attack. Even if they did, the sacred sword of fire would be enough to protect him until the others arrived. So he said calmly, "Fire Sword Saint, Qi Lianyan." Sun Lang did not give him a chance to speak. The Great War of Tianyuan is not far away. What is your position and what achievements do you have? Qi Lianyan frowned slightly. I'm not far away from adulthood. I have been practicing martial arts behind closed doors, so you have no achievements, right? Sun Lang said indifferently. My previous name was Jia Ying. I left home to join the army at 14. I entered the battlefield at 17. At 21, I took over the Northern Theater of Operations and was awarded the Marshal's Staff and the Military Lord of the Sword Pavilion of the Martial Arts Palace. At 23, I was ordered to plan the final battle against the Sky Demon, so I was nominally the Supreme Marshal of the world. In terms of achievements, if I say that I am the second in the world, I am afraid that no one in the court can claim to be the first. After the war, in order to track down the remnants of the Sky Demon, I hid my identity and pretended to be dead. I did not return for 2 years and hid in the world. Now, everything is about to come to light. In order to reward me for my achievements and efforts, the court awarded me the position of Shunsei General. I established my own office and appointed my own officials. All the ranks and standards are the same as in Tensei Province. In terms of official position, no one in the court is qualified to put on airs in front of me. In terms of seniority, your brother Qi Lianyan and I were comrades in the army. We were both 7 luminary sword saints, much earlier than you. In terms of martial arts, I'm the first in the world. Shunsei General glanced at Qi Lianyan indifferently. He did not mobilize the imperial army, nor did he use his internal energy. Instead, he stood calmly in the heat waves, within the range of the fire luminary's sword Qi. However, his aura steadily suppressed the fire luminary's sword saints. When he said that he was the first in the world, no one thought that he was bluffing. Qi Lianyan's expression changed. This was not going according to the plan. Just as he was about to interrupt Sun Lang, he felt the sacred sword in his hand tremble. In an instant, the fire luminaries flowing in his body stagnated. He swallowed the words he was about to say. Sun Lang continued, "Your brother Qi Lianyan was a friend of mine in the past. He obeyed his mission and bravely sacrificed himself in the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. It could be said that he did not fear death, even if his bones were crushed and his body crushed, as long as his chastity remained in the world. He died a worthy death. But what about you?" Just like Qi Lianyan, Sun Lang's voice spread far and wide. Many people could hear him clearly. "I have a rough idea of your life. You grew up under your brother's protection. Now that you have taken over his mantle and become the new fire luminary sword saint, you should support the king and protect the country. Why do you fight on the streets? Your dead brother used this sword to kill countless sky demons. You use it to show off your power to your own people on the streets. Is this how the sword of confusion should be used?" Qi Lianyan knew that he could not let this guy continue. He shouted, "Shut up, you insolent brat. How can you face your brother in the netherworld? Ignorant fool, you're so arrogant that you actually dare to bark wildly in front of me. You're simply impudent and reckless." Sun Lang's tone turned harsh. "As your brother's old comrade, I'm going to teach you a lesson today, just like your brother. You have no achievements, no responsibilities, and your skills are not good enough. You talk nonsense in front of me just because you have a holy sword. I am your dead brother's comrade, a great general of the Heaven's Origin sect who has made great contributions through mountains of blades and seas of fire. I'm a soldier of the Heaven's Origin sect just like your brother. You're just a brat. How dare you be so disrespectful and speak back to me with your sword? Using the holy sword without permission is disrespect for your elders. It is unfilial. It is disrespect for heroes. It is disloyalty. Do you think you deserve the fire luminary's sword? You're just a kid with no achievements. How dare you ask a bunch of heroes of the Heaven's Origin sect to get off their horses just because you have the holy sword? What right do you have?" Qi Lianyan was young and successful. When had he ever seen such a scene? For a moment, he was both shocked and furious. He felt the strange gazes shooting at him from all directions, and he wished for nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. In the end, he still firmly remembered the instructions of a certain person. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't be the first to make a move and seek trouble. But this situation now, do you understand? Your brother can't teach you. I will teach you in his place. Sun Lang Sunran said, "You are just a commoner. What do you want to do by pointing the holy sword at an important official of the imperial court? I am the Shunsei General, a comrade of your dead brother. Why don't you bow to me after seeing me?" Qi Lianyan gritted his teeth and said nothing. He was in a dilemma. If he couldn't leave, he wouldn't dare to brandish his sword and slash at them even if he had 3 times the courage. Sun Lang took a step forward, and his tone became even colder. "I've already said all the good and bad words. Hitting someone without teaching them a lesson is a great taboo. Today, the neighbors are my witnesses. I'm teaching you a lesson in a fair and square way." Qi Lianyan only saw Sun Lang take a step forward and felt like a mountain was pressing down on him. How could a newly promoted sword saint compare to the world's #1 who came out of the Great Desolate Mountain? His mind had been shaken by Sun Lang's rebuke. Seeing Sun Lang take a step forward, fear finally rose in his heart. The fire luminary's sword disappeared. He hesitated for a moment and finally bowed. "Greetings, General." Sun Lang looked at the soldiers and said coldly, "Did you not see the etiquette of General Shunsei?" Qi Lianyan was stunned. Then, blood rushed to his face. Sun Lang looked at him indifferently. "Why? Can't your legs bend?" Qi Lianyan gritted his teeth and slowly knelt on one knee. He convinced himself that it was okay. Like he said, he was a senior, a meritorious official of Tianyuan, and an important official of the imperial court. It was not embarrassing to kneel to him. Sun Lang saw him kneel and did not say anything. Instead, he looked at the Sun brothers. "Sun Zhongmo, tell me what happened." Sun Zhongmo and Sun Lang exchanged glances. Sun Lang's voice sounded in his ears. The second son of the Sun family of Jiangdong had a photographic memory and was very smart. He immediately repeated the conversation between Qi Lianyan and Shen Yaohua. Qi Lianyan was shocked and felt a chill in his heart. As expected, Sun Lang said coldly, enduring humiliation and forcing a smile. "Qi Lianyan, why do you say that?" Chapter 888. Enduring humiliation and forcing a smile. Can you explain what these two words mean? His tone was no longer calm, and his expression was no longer indifferent. His attitude, which had been easy to deal with, became serious. Wind rose in the air, and the aura of a peerless master slowly spread out. Suddenly, the air became piercingly cold, and the situation was completely reversed. A moment ago, Qi Lianyan was full of arrogance because he held the holy sword. Now, he was completely suppressed. Everyone felt a bone-piercing chill. Thus, they all knew that the Divine Strategies General, who had sternly reprimanded the new Fire Sword Saint, was truly enraged. Now it seemed that he had reason to reprimand Qi Lianyan on the street, accusing him of being conceited and disrespectful. Although his words were as sharp as knives and merciless, he was only reprimanding his former comrade's good-for-nothing brother as a senior. At most, he was exasperated. But now, after hearing Sun Zhongmo's retelling, the general was truly angry. He did seem to have a reason to be angry. But Qi Lianyan's heart trembled. With his intelligence, it was difficult for him to quickly follow Sun Lang's rhythm. But his warrior's intuition still brought him a terrifying premonition. It turned out that the continuous bombardment that made him feel ashamed and unable to resist was only a prelude. The real killing move only revealed its ferocious edge at this moment. In just a short moment, he had experienced the art of war of the heavens' origin commander of war, who was known to be the best in the 6 armies. It was really like a tsunami pressing down on him from all directions, attacking him from all directions. Only after he had barely resisted it did he realize in despair that the attack just now was only a prelude. The real attack had just begun. He opened his mouth, knowing that he absolutely couldn't let Sun Lang continue speaking. Qi Lianyan felt an unprecedented sense of helplessness and bewilderment. The world seemed to be far away from him. Those who had helped him, those who had high hopes for him, all stood far away. When he needed help the most, no one appeared. No one extended a helping hand. Everyone watched from afar, watching him face this terrifying monster alone. For a moment, fear rose in his heart. He maintained a half-kneeling posture, gritted his teeth, and said, Little brat spoke insolently and spoke nonsense. "Please forgive me, General." Sun Lang's expression had completely turned cold. He was like a mountain of ice and snow that had not melted for 1,000 years. An invisible but biting cold pressure enveloped the area, causing the hearts of the living beings to palpitate for no reason. They all looked at General Shinsei with shock and even fear. He was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Endure the humiliation, forcing a smile. He repeated these 2 words and looked down at Qi Lianyan, who was half kneeling on the ground. "Last night, I led the troops to raid the Copper Sparrow Terrace and wiped out all the remaining Sky Demon forces hiding there. Those demons who had not given up on killing the human race planned to infiltrate the Empire. The mysterious Copper Sparrow Terrace became the best breeding ground for them to carry out their plan. Although we have wiped out the sky demon forces in the Copper Sparrow Terrace, it does not mean that the guests who were having fun in the Copper Sparrow Terrace last night were cleared of suspicion. So we had no choice but to detain them all and spend the entire night confirming their innocence. This made me offend many people, but I do not regret it. My mission is to destroy the sky demon, and not a single one will be left. For this, I will go forward even if there are thousands of people. This is the price I must pay. Sun Lang raised his hand and pointed at the boy from the Shen family, who also had a look of fear on his face. This young man went to the Copper Sparrow Terrace with his friends last night and was detained because of this. There are many people like him, and we treated them all equally. He has a strong temperament and was not satisfied with the way we handled him, so he refused to cooperate with our investigation. So until dawn, when the guests at the Copper Sparrow Terrace had all returned home, there was still no progress on his side. Then, his family, his sister, came to find him. It was then that I discovered his identity, because I recognized his sister. His sister was none other than the late Sword Saint of Water, the wife of the Empire's West conquering general. Sun Lang glanced at the Seven Treasures fragrance carriage. The figure in the carriage was like a frozen painting, not moving at all. Then, he turned his gaze to Qi Lianyan, and in an instant, his gentleness turned into a sharp blade. He said coldly, "The Sword Saint of Water died together with your brother in the Great Barren Mountain. I witnessed their deaths with my own eyes, along with the other 300,000 soldiers of the Great Barren Mountain. All of them will be remembered by the world forever. I am honored to have worked with them." So when I saw the widow of my old friend, I was both surprised and happy. I have been living in seclusion for 2 years and have not even seen my family, let alone them. But in any case, I am happy to see that she is well. Just like when I saw you take over your brother's mantle and become the new Sword Saint of Fire, I was also very happy. A younger brother inheriting his brother's legacy and having 2 Sword Saints in one family. How glorious. It is like fate. Sun Lang's tone was somewhat bleak. But no matter how happy I was, I could not forget my duty. Although it was the widow of my old friend who came to beg me, I would not let her go without principle. After confirming that the young master of the Shun family was fine, I returned him to his sister because I still have a heavy responsibility on my shoulders. I have to finish her husband's unfinished business for him. Then, here comes the question. Shinsei General narrowed his eyes, and an even more bone-chilling aura shrouded him. Enduring humiliation and forcing a smile, what is going on? Why did you use these 2 words, and why did you say such things? Qi Lianyan, the brother of the late Sword Saint of Fire, the wielder of the Sword of Confusion, answer my question. Sun Lang took 2 steps forward, and his tone was as heavy as a mountain. His words were imposing, and now it was like a mountain of sharp swords pressing down on Qi Lianyan. I am asking you, why did the widow of a late friend come to ask for help from her husband's fellow soldiers? And why did she endure humiliation? Why did she force a smile in front of the comrades her husband entrusted his life to? Sun Lang said coldly, "Don't tell me that she came to me to suffer a great grievance? Why did you say that you empathize with her? Why did you say that you empathize with her pain? The West conquering general was also your brother's comrade, and he died with him in the Great Barren Mountain. Who gave you the guts to flirt with his widow in the street? What did you mean by those words?" Although his tone was calm, it was extremely cold, and the murderous intent in it was difficult to describe with words. Sun Lang said slowly, "You said you wanted to help her, but how?" Qi Lianyan was terrified. He was really scared. His heart was in turmoil, and countless emotions surged. Fear, anger, hatred, and mockery. He realized that Sun Lang was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, and also much more shameless than he had imagined. Both of them knew the truth of the battle on the Great Barren Mountain. The Sword Saint of Fire and the Sword Saint of Fire both died at his hands, and yet he still dared to boast shamelessly and distort the truth but Qi Lianyan dared not say anything. In the end, he still had some brains. He would never dare to tell the truth here and publicly declare that it was Sun Lang who had killed the two sword saints in the Great Barren Mountain. He did not dare, because once the truth was revealed here, no one knew how things would develop. But he, Qi Lianyan, would definitely be smashed to pieces and die without a burial place. His Majesty would be the first to not let him off. And Sun Lang, this guy, has he even considered my thoughts? Qi Lianyan was both shocked and furious. This was different from what he had planned. He wanted to provoke Sun Lang in the street. As long as he forced and provoked Sun Lang into action, regardless of the outcome, he would take credit for it. This plan was flawless. He only needed to flash the sacred sword of fire and intimidate the soldiers. If Sun Lang did not appear, his prestige and face would be swept away. If Sun Lang did appear, he would inevitably be caught in the middle of a street brawl. But this guy, how could this guy do this? He was obviously a peerless master in the world, but why did he not have the temper of a martial artist? He did not fight, but only talked. He even used his official status, seniority, and experience to pressure others. He did not even move a little finger, yet he easily dispelled this almost perfect plan. This guy's martial arts were powerful, but how could he be so cunning as well? Qi Lianyan's heart was cold. He knew that today's operation had failed miserably. The first thing to do now was to find a way to escape and seek revenge in the future. Forget it, forget it. He made up his mind. He put down his other knee and knelt down on both knees. He kowtowed 3 times on the ground and said loudly, "I was confused and used the wrong words. What I meant was that Madame Shun went to the Copper Sparrow Terrace alone to save her younger brother. When she saw her late husband, she would be nostalgic. When she saw the general, she would think of her late husband and would be heartbroken. But she could not cry in front of the general. So, as he explained, he remembered the humiliation of kneeling. Qi Lianyan made up his mind. He would repay today's matter 100 times over, 100 times over. But he was still too young. In the past, when the generals used their troops, their momentum was like a thunderstorm. Every time they attacked where the enemy had to defend themselves, they would hit where it hurt the most. In a confrontation with the enemy, they would often hit the vital points, and when the enemy was exhausted, they would reveal more openings. Then they would discover in despair that a new wave of attacks would attack the newly exposed openings. Wave after wave, the more they hit, the more painful it would be, until the morale of the army was completely destroyed and it turned into a great defeat. Just like now, Sun Lang's offensive was far from over. The decisive move was at this moment. "You want to leave after offending commander of war?" Sun Lang stared coldly at Qi Lianyan, who was trying to explain himself. "No, you're lying. What do you mean by lending a hand? What do you mean by fellow sufferers sympathizing with each other? Why do you think that the one surnamed Sun likes to meddle in other people's business?" Qi Lianyan was just about to explain when Sun Lang waved his hand and sneered. His laughter was full of sadness. Criticizing heroes is the instinct of villains. Forgetting heroes is the trait of mediocre people. I was prepared for this, but I didn't expect you to think so too. Qi Lianyan, I don't know who instigated you, but I know what you're thinking. I disappeared for 2 years, so there must be a lot of discussion in the court. Those ambitious people who want to stir up trouble and the remnants of the sky demon who want to see the world in chaos must have spread all kinds of rumors. The so-called truth of the Battle of Great Desolate Mountain, the so-called fact that the imperial court sealed, all kinds of rumors became more and more intense. I didn't take it to heart, because one day, the truth will be revealed. The sun will melt the snow and the light will drive away the darkness. I used to believe so, but things are much worse than I imagined. He looked at Qi Lianyan, his eyes restrained, and said without joy or sorrow, "Even you believe it." Qi Lianyan didn't expect this development. He stammered, "I didn't," Sun Lang said calmly. "If you didn't, why did you provoke me here? Why did you block Xinyao Hua's carriage? Why did you take out the sacred fire sword? Why were you full of hostility toward me? Why did you say those things?" Qi Lianyan couldn't help but stand up and take 2 steps back. No, I didn't. Sun Lang closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When you spoke earlier, you used your internal energy to transmit your voice. It was loud and clear and could be heard for miles. I don't know how many people heard it. As the sacred fire sword saint, your words will definitely cause a wave of rumors to spread. It will be used by people with ulterior motives. Qi Lianyan was flustered. I didn't mean that. It's not important. Sun Lang sighed. What's important is that it has already happened, and I can't sit by and watch the reputation of my fallen comrades be tarnished. We fought and gave up everything in the war. No one deserves to be treated like that. Protecting the reputation of the fallen heroes is the responsibility of the living. He looked straight at Qi Lianyan. Let's go. Qi Lianyan felt his soul tremble under his gaze. He asked in a trembling voice, "Where are we going?" Sun Lang put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. The towering palace walls and the magnificent halls were the center of the empire. It was the residence of the emperor and the place of the greatest centralization of power in the mortal world. You already have a preconceived prejudice in your heart. No matter how much I explain, I can't change your mind. Even if you agree verbally, you won't believe it in your heart. You will think that I pressured and coerced you. Today's incident involves the secrets of Tianyuan. It's no longer a matter between the two of us. It's a matter of everyone. It's a matter of all the people who died in the battle in the Great Desolate Mountain. It's a matter of all the heroes of Tianyuan. It's a matter of the empire and the world. Everything in the world ends in the world. Qi Lianyan suddenly thought of an extremely terrifying possibility. He widened his eyes in shock, and boundless fear surged into his heart. No, impossible. This guy wants to... Sun Lang's voice was still calm, as if it were a voice from heaven. Today, right now, we'll go to the Golden Palace and the Royal Palace and strike the sea golden beam drum. We'll go to heaven and gather all the officials. We'll go to His Majesty and debate with him. We'll explain the incident in the Great Desolate Mountain from the beginning to the end in front of the emperor and the officials. We'll solve all the doubts in your heart and reveal the truth to the world. Are you satisfied now? Let's go. You'll die if you don't. Chapter 889. When these words reached Qi Lianyan's ears, they were as loud as thunder and lightning. He couldn't help but shudder. To him, these were the most terrifying words in the world. Crazy, all of them were crazy. Qi Lianyan was horrified. He stared at Sun Lang in disbelief. How could there be such a monster in the world? Everything had happened in a hurry, but he had seen through his opponent's intentions in such a short time. Not only had he not stepped into the trap, but he had also easily resolved the crisis and attack. Not only that, he had even taken advantage of the situation to push back. Even with his intelligence, he could completely figure out the consequences of this matter. This was not a case of trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Not only had he failed to carry out his plan, but Sun Lang had even dragged him to the palace, gathered all the officials, forced a court meeting, and openly told his lies in front of the emperor and all the officials. He was practically forcing the emperor to make a choice. Either you cooperate with my performance, or you fight right now. The result was obvious. If the emperor could be tough, then he would have had many chances to be tough. But compromising meant losing face. When an ordinary person lost face, they would stomp their feet and curse in anger, let alone the emperor, who could kill millions of people. The emperor had lost a great deal of face, and had also suffered an inexplicable defeat. His anger was bound to rise to the heavens. No matter who he vented his anger on, the pitiful fire sword saint would have to bear the brunt, because every failure had to have a scapegoat. This time, even if Qi Lianyan wanted to shift the blame, he couldn't because he had acted alone. In other words, he had single-handedly caused the situation. He had mishandled it. No, absolutely not. He absolutely couldn't agree to it. This was the only thing he absolutely couldn't agree to. Qi Lianyan's heart was filled with great fear. Like a frightened little girl, he took 2 steps back and shook his head desperately. No, you can't do this, Sun Lang said indifferently. Go or die. You only have these two choices. At this moment, Qi Lianyan's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Just a moment ago, he had been complacent and had wanted to make Sun Lang feel what it was like to be in a difficult position. But in just a moment, his face had been slapped by his opponent's fierce counterattack. Before he could snap out of his stupor, he was faced with an even more dangerous dilemma. The dilemma he prepared for Sun Lang was nothing more than losing face or being at a disadvantage. But the dilemma he faced was death no matter how he looked at it. As long as one was a martial artist, one's strength came from one's own strength. The higher one's cultivation, the greater one's achievements, the stronger one's heart would be. This was even more so for those who were young and ambitious. This heart was divided into pride and confidence. It was not entirely a bad thing. Sometimes, it was the source of courage to face difficulties head-on and be fearless. However, success depended on one's mental state, and failure also depended on one's mental state. If one's spirit was thwarted and one's mental state scattered, it would be a fatal blow to a martial artist. It was enough to cause a proud son of heaven to become lifeless overnight and his mental state to collapse. And this was the case for Qi Lianyan. At such a young age, he had taken over his elder brother's mantle and become the new Fire Radiant Sword Saint. He had practically stood at the peak of all martial artists in the world. What kind of achievement was this? Countless flowers, praise, and glory surrounded him. But the moment he stood at the peak of his life, he was smashed to the ground by another monster with a stick. This kind of blow was simply fatal. If he went, he would die. If he didn't go, he would also die. From a moment they met, Sun Lang had launched a meticulous and fatal attack. He had pressured him with righteousness, loyalty, filial piety, seniority, achievements, and moral character. One after another, he had easily beaten Qi Lianyan's spirit until he had no choice but to lower his head and admit his mistake. But that was only the beginning. His vicious follow-up moves were endless, wave after wave, each more vicious than the last. Now, he had been pushed to a dead end by Sun Lang. For the young and vigorous Qi Lianyan, this kind of blow and setback was simply too great. His heart had long since been thrown into disarray. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and both sides were facing death. But at least he still had some rationality left in him. Fear made one feel inferior, and one could even give up one's dignity. Qi Lianyan's head heated up, and he knelt down without even thinking. This time was different from the previous time. There was no longer any humiliation in his heart, only fear. His mind was no longer filled with thoughts of how he would repay Sun Lang 100-fold, but rather how he could beg Sun Lang to be merciful and let him pass through this crisis. He pleaded, "General," this lowly one spoke wrongly. "Please forgive me this time." "Forgive you this time?" Sun Lang's tone was Sunran. "What did you do wrong? Your suspicions are only natural. Your brother died in the Great Desolate Mountain. Many people died in the Great Desolate Mountain, but I survived and have been missing for 2 years. There are indeed suspicious things about it. It's perfectly normal for you to have doubts. Today, I'm going to clear your doubts in the most honorable way." His eyes were like lightning as he stared at Qi Lianyan coldly. Only the two of them knew the hidden meaning in their conversation. Sun Lang was destroying the pathetic chess piece in front of him step by step. But to those who did not know the truth, General Shinsei sounded so honorable and had a clear conscience. In contrast, Qi Lianyan, who had been so arrogant just a moment ago, appeared to be a coward, flustered, and at a loss. It was obvious who was in the right and who was in the wrong. General Shin's voice spread far and wide. Many people could hear him clearly. "You suspect that there are other reasons for the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. You suspect that your brother's death is very suspicious. That is your right, but my duty is to protect the reputation of the heroes of the Heaven's Origin sector, not just your brother's, but mine as well. The most credible and convincing way is to go to the Golden Palace and argue." Sun Lang's words were sonorous and forceful, full of magnanimity and confidence. In front of His Majesty and the ministers, the truth will be revealed to the world. If I really did play a dishonorable role in the Great Desolate Mountain, as you said, then the Imperial bodyguards will arrest me on the spot. There are so many experts in the palace, not to mention the civil and military officials. With so many experts surrounding me, how can I resist? Am I right? This is my sincerity. This is my way of proving my innocence. If His Majesty and the ministers believe that I am guilty, then everything will end in the Golden Palace. Sun Lang Sunran looked at Qi Lianyan. Is this not enough? Qi Lianyan stammered. Enough, enough. Then what are you waiting for? The radiant fire sword saint was about to cry. I, Sun Lang said in a low voice. You teased the sword saint's widow on the street and used the sacred sword bestowed by the imperial court to intimidate the soldiers of the Wei Ling Empire. I should have taught you a lesson, but for the sake of your brother, I only reprimanded you. However, you only listened to me verbally and did not mean what you said. You are not convinced. You are spouting nonsense and doubting the inside story of the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. For the sake of your dead brother, I am willing to go to the Golden Palace with you to argue. Previously, you were full of flowery words, arrogant and ignorant. Now, you are retreating in every possible way, unwilling to obey my orders. I have given in time and time again, and you are still making excuses in front of me? At this point, Sun Lang's voice was stern. It was as if a thunderclap had struck from the sky. His voice exploded like thunder. Could it be that you think this sun is made of mud? To outsiders, this sudden shout was indeed like a thunderclap, but to the person involved, it was even more soul-shaking. It contained a power that struck straight at the heart. 90% of the power contained in this roar was aimed at Qi Lianyan. No one knew what Qi Lianyan was facing at this moment. It was said that when humans were faced with unbearable pressure, there were only two reactions. One was to be unreservedly humble, and the other was to go completely insane. A tsunami of killing intent, the aura of blood and fire, the inextinguishable flames of fury that had been condensed in the bloody battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, entwined with black blood energy, spilled toward Qi Lianyan. What was even more frightening was the look in his eyes. Just like an executioner who had killed many criminals, the way he looked at people would change. In their eyes, life would become something else, no longer sacred and noble, but incomparably fragile. At this moment, Sun Lang was like an executioner. He was looking at something called the Fire Radiance Sword Saint. Because he had killed it before, because it had been very easy to kill it, this one was not difficult. It was this kind of gaze. A gaze that said that he could kill if he wanted to. Qi Lianyan understood the look in his eyes. It was only at this moment that he completely understood what kind of monster the person who had come to provoke him was. He didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was said that when humans were faced with unbearable pressure, there were only two reactions. One was to be unreservedly humble, and the other was to go completely insane. Qi Lianyan was the Fire Radiant Sword Saint, a young and promising martial artist, an extraordinary hero. Martial artists were stronger than ordinary people, and even in desperate situations, they had the strength to resist. As a proud son of heaven, when faced with a dead-end dilemma, it was very likely that he would fall into madness and launch a furious attack without regard for the consequences. But Sun Lang had already expected this. Right now, he needed Qi Lianyan to be humble, not crazy. Therefore, Qi Lianyan's courage to resist and the madness in his mind were all frightened away by this gaze. Under such pressure, he no longer had the time to consider the difference between being able to kill and not being able to kill. He only knew that Sun Lang did indeed have the ability to kill him easily, so he broke down and became humble. He sat down on the ground and followed his fear instinctively and shouted, "Spare me." Sun Lang said indifferently, "What are you talking about? I'm not going to do anything to you." Qi Lianyan had already fallen into despair. He lay on the ground again and repeatedly cowed out. The person in front of him was a terrifying monster, and the anger of His Majesty was equally frightening. He did not want either of these two options. Therefore, the young man who had been incomparably arrogant just now cried and shouted, "I was wrong. For the sake of my brother, please spare me this time. If this matter is really brought to His Majesty's court, I'll be finished. My life will be over. You're a magnanimous person. Please spare me. I was young and impetuous and mistakenly believed the slanderous words of a villain, so I misunderstood General." You're a magnanimous person. He was already speaking without thinking. When people were panicking and breaking down, they would often make more mistakes. Mistakenly believed the slanderous words of a villain? Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. Whose slanderous words? Tell me his name. The show had just begun. Chapter 890. Whose slanderous words? Tell me his name. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. The terrifying opponent was closing in on him. In his despair, Qi Lianyan realized that he had misspoken again. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the enemy was closing in on him like a nightmare. One could only imagine the despair in his heart. Why did it turn out like this? Why did it turn out like this? Why won't he let me go? But he had lost his drive and had lost the best chance to resist. Qi Lianyan was the fire sword saint. Although he was not as good as Sun Lang, he still had real skills. He knew very well that at this moment, he was completely at a disadvantage. Sun Lang's aura had locked on to every part of his body. If he made the slightest move, he would be attacked by a storm. But he could not say the names of those people. This was no different from going to the Golden Palace and confronting the Emperor. It might even be more serious. His face was dripping with cold sweat, his eyes were erratic, and his breathing was rapid. This sorry state made the surrounding people of the imperial capital feel that it was absurd. They then shook their heads and sighed. How could such a person obtain the recognition of a sacred sword? He was far inferior to his brother. In contrast, the Shunsei general standing in front of him could be called a hero. Only when there was a comparison would there be harm. He had always been a man of reason. Although he had been provoked by the younger generation with a sword, he had always been kind to him and reprimanded him instead of teaching him a lesson directly, because he was the younger brother of an old friend. It was only when he learned of this young man's arrogant words that he became angry. However, his anger was still justified. He even proposed to go to the Golden Palace to confront the Emperor. It could be said that he maintained the greatest restraint. This was the true demeanor of a great general. He had a clear conscience, and his words and actions were full of righteousness. At that moment, many citizens of the imperial capital had already fallen in love with the general of divine strategies and had firmly engraved today's events in their hearts. The stage that Qi Lianyan had painstakingly chosen and the audience that he invited had all become Sun Lang's wedding clothes. Many people were already showing signs of becoming the general of divine strategies. But Qi Lianyan had no time to be annoyed or angry. He had come from one hopeless situation to another. The third option was still a perilous situation with no chance of survival. There is no hope. Wait a minute. Sun Lang looked at Qi Lianyan's changing expression and said indifferently, "It seems that you were instigated to come here today to pick a fight and force this son to show himself, right? To be able to persuade a newly promoted Fire Radiant Sword Saint. He is definitely not someone to be trifled with. To be able to make you so fearful that you don't even dare to mention his name, his identity is definitely not to be underestimated." The Celestial Yuan generals all had strange looks on their faces, and Sun Zhongmo hurriedly lowered his head. There were even gasps of surprise from the crowd. The capital was the home of the Son of Heaven, the most benevolent of lands. In this feudal era, where centralized power was centralized, the people living in the capital enjoyed the best resources and the most open-minded culture in the world. Even the ordinary commoners had extraordinary insight and ability to think. They also realized that there seemed to be a huge conspiracy behind this matter. As for how big it was so big that no one dared to delve into it. Qi Lianyan raised his head in horror and begged, "No, it's not," Sun Lang said indifferently. "Then I'm even more interested. Last night, I went straight to the enemy's den and attacked the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, destroying the foundation that the remnants of the Sky Demon had painstakingly built. The aftermath shook the capital, and the rebels of the Sky Demon who had escaped the disaster must have gnashed their teeth in anger. But in less than half a day, my subordinates were picked on by a 7 Radiant Sword Saint, and the spearhead was pointed directly at me. Is this a coincidence? It seems not. And this Sword Saint has already admitted that he was instigated by someone, but he doesn't dare to mention the name of the person behind this. This is really surprising. It really makes one's imagination run wild. He stared at Qi Lianyan, his voice cold and emotionless. Answer my question. Tell me the name. Qi Lianyan, who instigated you to pick a fight with me? Who is tarnishing the reputation of your brother and mine? Who is adding fuel to the fire and smearing the glory of the battle on the great desolate mountain? Who is it? Answer my question. Who is it that doesn't want to see me return to the capital? Who is it that flew into a rage because of what happened at the Copper Sparrow Pavilion yesterday? Qi Lianyan, if you're still Qi Lianyan's younger brother, if you still think that you are the fire-radiant sword saint, if you think that your tolerance is worthy of the sacred sword in your hand, Shensei General said word by word, then let us see the strength of the sword saint. Tell me his name. Let us hear it. Let me know. Let the world see clearly who is shaking the glory of the battle on the great desolate mountain, who is stirring up trouble in the dark. Qi Lianyan was collapsing. He was losing his reason and his mind was going crazy. He suddenly yelled, I don't know. I don't know. You are talking nonsense. There is no such thing. Stubborn and unrepentant, Sun Lang shouted loudly, his angry voice like thunder in the sky. Today, you said his name in front of everyone. Don't tell me that someone would dare to silence you. If you tell me his name, I'll guarantee your safety. No matter how strong your opponent is, I won't allow him to harm you. Otherwise, Qi Lianyan, you'll suffer a crushing defeat today. Even if I let you go now, do you think you'll be able to survive? Qi Lianyan was so frightened by this shout that he retreated. His mental defenses were peeled off layer by layer. When pure fear and chaos ruled over the mind, a powerful warrior was no different from a mortal. He said in panic, I can't. Pang Ji suddenly took a step forward and shouted loudly, General, this kind of stubborn and bold fanatic provoked the widow of a hero, used the sacred sword for private use, criticized the imperial court's general, and was used by evil people. He is still stubborn, even in the face of death. Why are you still talking nonsense with him? Why don't we take him down and interrogate him? At the same time, Imperial Tutor Pang gave a subtle signal with his eyes. The generals of Tianyuan understood and immediately echoed, Take him down, take him down, take him down. Seeing their general's order, the soldiers all followed suit. On the long street, countless armored elite soldiers slammed their weapons on the ground. Take it down, take it down. Take him down. Their voices were like thunder, neat and uniform. They cut across the sky, and their killing intent soared into the sky. This scene was really hot-blooded. Humans had the mentality of following the crowd, and they were emotional creatures. Moreover, they liked to stand on the side of righteousness and seek moral superiority. Now, the general's words were like knives, reasonable and justified. Qi Lianyan was drenched in cold sweat, despicable and wretched. In contrast, Sun Lang was naturally the righteous side. The people liked to stand on the side that seemed to be righteous to show their moral upbringing. Therefore, it was natural that they would denounce Qi Lianyan, who had been instigated by evil people, angrily. The combination of all these factors and the uniform slogans caused more and more people to join in the shouting. Everyone's expression was fanatical, and everyone's eyes were full of righteousness. They wanted to see justice punish evil and make the sinner pay the price, by any means. Therefore, they also shouted, Take him down, take him down, take him down. In an instant, everyone was pointing fingers, and the entire city was filled with enemies. Qi Lianyan looked at all this in confusion and fear. He really didn't understand how things had turned out like this. But in fact, he understood. It's all because of you. He looked at Sun Lang with fear and hatred. This extreme hatred lasted for only a moment before it was extinguished. Now, his emotions had reached an extreme, and all kinds of emotions were rapidly changing in his mind. One moment, he was afraid of Sun Lang's methods, and the next moment, he hated him for leaving no room for negotiation. Why did you do this? Why did you force me? Why did you make things difficult for me? Couldn't you have followed the plan? Why did you show up? Or come and beat me up after you showed up? It doesn't matter how badly you beat me up. Why did you say those things? Why did you force me to this point?" And Sun Lang noticed this glint of hatred. He raised his hand and lightly waved it. The armored soldiers on the street immediately fell silent, as if they were one person. The excited people also gradually calmed down. Sun Lang slowly said, "Last night's matter was urgent. I've just returned to the capital and haven't accepted my authority. Setting up a private torture chamber is indeed unjustified, and I can't do it a second time. Qi Lianyan, you've rejected my good intentions once again. So, I've already done my duty. Since you're unwilling to speak, then go and explain to His Majesty. We can solve this matter together." Hearing this, Qi Lianyan was even more shocked. "Are you King done yet? Why did you go back again?" He roared, "No." Sun Lang ignored him and shouted, "Pangji." Imperial Tutor Pang roared, "A lowly general is here. You'll be the vanguard. Cross the Jinshui Bridge at the Gate of Heaven Influence. Strike the Jinshui Drum of the Sea. Familiarize yourself with the Imperial Guards and inform the ministers." Shensei General sternly said, "Sun Lang has returned to the capital and wants to see His Majesty. He has an important matter to report to the Emperor and the ministers. Ask the Emperor to leave the hall and summon the officials into the palace. Tell them that General Shensei requests His Majesty to hold a court meeting." Pangji loudly said, "We obey General's order. General's order is to hold a court meeting." The Tianyuan generals sternly echoed, "General's order is to hold a court meeting." The soldiers roared back, "General's order is to hold a court meeting. Hold a court meeting. Hold a court meeting." Pangji spurred his horse and was about to leave amidst the shouting. Qi Lianyan's mind was in turmoil. He knew that he couldn't return from this trip, and there was no turning back. He would definitely be crushed under the wrath of the Emperor and become a scapegoat. In fear, his mental defenses completely collapsed. He shouted, "Wait, wait." Sun Lang sternly said, "That the general's words are no joke. Qi Lianyan, just you wait." Qi Lianyan shouted in despair, "I'll die if I say it." Sun Lang shouted, "You'll die even if you don't say it. If you say it here, I'll protect you. Whether you say in the Golden Palace or not, it's none of my business." Qi Lianyan's tears and mucus flowed down his face. His hands dug deep into the floor tiles as he madly shouted in despair. "Will you protect me if I say it? With me here, those people will never be able to kill you." Sun Lang shouted, "If you cooperate." Qi Lianyan completely collapsed. He madly shouted, "I'll say it. I'll say it." Just then, his expression froze. His face flushed red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Blazing waves of qi spread uncontrollably from his body. A tyrannical aura swelled in his body, and streaks of sharp and scorching sword radiance penetrated his body. It seemed that there was an unstable power stirring inside him, venting out a violent and uncontrollable power to bite back at its master. It happened so suddenly that everyone was shocked. The outstanding martial artists of Tianyuan shouted in shock and anger, "Oh no, someone wants to silence us." At the same time, a vast and powerful force came pressing down with an unstoppable, mysterious force. It seemed to be enough to seal off heaven and earth. At this critical moment, Sun Lang threw out a palm. It seemed that he was going to save him, but it seemed that only Qi Lianyan knew who was trying to kill him. He looked at Sun Lang in shock and fury. He wanted to say something, but with the external force of the palm and the internal qi flowing in reverse, Qi Lianyan could no longer speak a complete sentence. With the last of his strength, he shouted, "It's," in the end, the word you did not leave his mouth. In an instant, the body of the radiant fire sword saint was swallowed up by the blazing flames from the inside out. Qi Lianyan died without knowing how Sun Lang killed him. He did not understand when Sun Lang had the intention to kill him. He did not know when Sun Lang had made the move, and he did not understand how Sun Lang had provoked his radiant fire power to instantly detonate the internal qi balance in his body. But he understood the look in Sun Lang's eyes. In the last moment of his life, he knew what Sun Lang was saying. He was saying, "Thank you for your cooperation. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."